Chapter 1584. Outside the cave abode, Zhang Yan was standing on the boat with Elder Peng and the others. Suddenly, his eyes flashed and he said, "I've killed Guru Xian Hong's doppelganger. The rest are dead. However, this person is hiding from us and is unwilling to send down his doppelganger." Feng Lan said sarcastically, "This behavior is unbefitting of a sect master." Guo Juying said in a low voice, "This person will not do things without a purpose. He might be waiting for an opportunity." Elder Peng thought for a moment and sneered. He said with certainty, "This person is stalling for time, hoping that there will be a change in the situation outside." Zhang Yan nodded slightly. This was the same as his judgment. However, Guru Xian Hong would not be able to hold on for long. If he did not send down his doppelganger within a month, then there was no need to bother with him anymore. After such a long time, Guru Xian Hong would definitely not be able to find the real world. That was no different from death. After waiting for 2 days, 5 rays of light flew over from the sky. Ao Shao and the other 4 heaven masters had returned. Zhang Yan could clearly see that none of them had sent down their second level of Dharmakaya. Just like before, they had only condensed their first level of Dharmakaya. This was understandable as the amount of Dharmakaya contained within it was not much. Even if it was lost a few times, it would not affect the foundation of the Dharmakaya. In the future, with a little effort, they would be able to make up for it. Guru Xian Hong could actually use this method as well, especially to stall for time. However, there was a problem. One could not consume external medicine in the outland. Moreover, in a situation where he knew that he was no match for his opponent, sending down these doppelgangers would only waste his transcendence energy and essence. It was very likely that he would deplete his vitality before the so-called reinforcements arrived. In fact, even if someone came to rescue him, it would be impossible to defeat so many powerful cultivators in a short period of time. Therefore, no matter what choice this person made, he would not be able to escape death in the end. After the 5 heaven masters understood the situation, they were willing to stay and wait. Huan Dutian Heavenly Lord said, "If we don't eliminate this person, how can I and my fellow Taoists return with peace of mind? His plan is wrong." No matter what, Master Xian Hong was a cultivator of enlightenment. If they let him go this time, they would have to constantly guard against this person coming to seek revenge. Since they had offended him, they would have to hunt him down to the end. Ao Shao asked, "Jinren Zhang, the thing that killed our Dharmakayas just now, is it the killer move that Xian Hong mentioned?" Zhang Yan nodded. "This should be it." Ao Shao sighed and said, "It's really extraordinary." Zhang Yan smiled and said, "If I'm not wrong, that item was left behind by the founding master. Actually, this generation is still unable to fully utilize its power. Otherwise, it wouldn't have caused such a commotion just now." Ao Shao was even more shocked. He thought for a while and said, "Xian Hong Heaven still has a few lower realms, and there are many caves under the jurisdiction of the Luo Mountain Monastery. How do you plan to deal with them after this is over?" Zhang Yan had already considered this. He said, "Xian Hong Heaven is the place where the founding master resided in the past. It can't be abandoned. There are many sects in Yihaitian that are related to the founding master. If Master Ao allows it, I would like to move them here." Ao Shao smiled and said, "That's a good thing. Why would I stop you?" The group waited for about 10 days. Suddenly, they sensed something. They turned to look in the southwest direction and saw a pillar of light tearing through the sky. It landed in the lower realm with a loud bang. Elder Peng snorted and mocked, "Finally, he's willing to show himself." Feng Lan said, "Don't let him escape to another place." With a thought from Zhang Yan, a streak of sword light had already charged over. The 10,000 empty realm ring had been sealed by the Green Jade Palace's token. No one could pass through it. If he escaped to outer space, it would be quite troublesome. The sword light instantly traversed the air and collided with the aura from afar, stopping it in its tracks. He immediately took a step forward and broke through the void. He appeared in the lower realm in an instant. As the light flickered and mana fluctuated, the cultivators who were participating in the battle arrived one after another. Everyone looked over and saw a giant figure of clear chi not far away. There were circles of ripples coming from its feet, and it was constantly releasing water waves and smoke to resist the flying swords. It looked like Master Xian Hong, but this person's magic power was far stronger than what they had seen before. When Ao Xiao saw his appearance, he said, "Oh, this person must have merged all his mana clones." The Luo Mountain Monastery's cultivation method is not simple. Master Xian Hong was a cultivator who had gone through the second tribulation. There were 2 Dharma bodies hidden in the sky beyond heaven. However, they had merged into one. Usually, cultivators of this level could only control their Dharma bodies separately. They could not do what Master Xian did. The Heavenly Lord Appraiser stroked his beard and said, "Although this person has only gone through the second tribulation, it seems like he can deal with a third tribulation cultivator." The other Heaven Lords also nodded, cautious expressions on their faces. Guru Xian Hong saw that everyone had arrived, but he did not avoid them. Instead, he looked around and his gaze landed on Zhang Yan. Zhang Yan knew what he meant. He was inviting him to go up and fight. He couldn't help but smile faintly. This wasn't a battle of magical exchange, so he could very well refuse. However, if this person died at the hands of a cultivator from another world, it might cause trouble in the future. If he ended it himself, he would be able to answer to the Patriarch. Thus, he tore the flying swords away and stepped forward. "Master Xian Hong, please." Feng Lan thought it was inappropriate. Elder Peng. Elder Peng raised his hand. "It's fine. Master Zhang can handle it. We can just step back." Guru Xian Hong saw that everyone had retreated. Soon, only he and Zhang Yan were left on the battlefield. He no longer stood on ceremony. He raised his hand and pushed forward. With a rumbling sound, heaven and earth trembled, and a violent wave of energy surged forward. On the other hand, Zhang Yan struck out with his fist, and it instantly collapsed space and blasted the huge wave into pieces. His gaze flickered as he executed numerous body-locking divine abilities that descended onto his opponent. At the same time, the sword light in the sky transformed into a myriad of techniques that shot over swiftly from all directions like a shower of lightning. This time, Master Xian Hong allowed the sword rays to pass through his body. Zhang Yan raised his eyebrows. He did not expect this person to use the root fruit right away. However, although Master Xian Hong had fused 2 avatars, the root fruit was still twisted. In other words, he would need to calculate at least 2 times to kill this person. But here came the problem. To find the opponent's root fruit, he would need to expend a large amount of divine will. It was almost impossible to do it twice in a short period of time. He thought, so this is what this person is planning. If he calculated the location of this person's root fruit, under normal circumstances, his vitality would be greatly damaged. Not only would he not be able to kill him, he might even be attacked after his vitality was exhausted. It was a pity that ever since he cultivated the 6th transformation of strength path and swallowed the origin of heaven and earth when he severed the future, he could no longer be seen as a stage 3 mortal metamorphosis cultivator. His gaze focused and his divine will continued to operate. Immediately, he found the root of the problem. Countless sword beams intertwined and scattered the Dharmakaya into a ball of clear waves. However, it was inevitable that the chi dynamic would drop. On the other hand, the clear ripples suddenly converged, and then Master Xian Hong appeared once more. At this moment, he was 30 kilometers tall and possessed a monstrous aura. He didn't waste even a moment before he stretched out his hand and slapped it towards Zhang Yan while completely disregarding the rays of light that were shuttling through his body. Boom! It was as if the sky and earth were shaking. It was as if everything would cease to exist under this palm. However, at this moment, Zhang Yan raised his sleeve and stretched out 2 fingers, lightly tapping on the huge palm. At the same time, the originally declining aura suddenly rose, as if the low point just now was only a great wave that would rise in the future. The world seemed to freeze for an instant. A look of astonishment appeared on Master Xian Hong's face, mixed with a trace of disbelief. In the next moment, his mountain-like body collapsed and turned into dust. Zhang Yan retracted his hand and waited quietly. After a while, another hole opened up, swallowed everything, and disappeared completely. At this moment, the spectators did not expect the battle to end so quickly. A Stage 3 Mortal Metamorphosis cultivator killed a second Tribulation Passing cultivator. This was beyond the imagination of ordinary people. Even though this was the case, the aura on Zhang Yan's body did not weaken much. This caused the expressions of the few Heaven Masters to change slightly. All of them understood that the fighting ability displayed by this person was far from his limit. Elder Peng glanced to the left and right, yet he chuckled. He understood Zhang Yan's strength better than anyone else, and that was why he retreated so decisively just now. He wanted to let everyone see his true strength, and with such a powerful cultivator standing on his side, it was enough to deter some of the people who were originally wavering. He thought for a moment and floated to Zhang Yan's side. He said with a smile, "Fellow Taoist obtained the mystic stone and pushed the Luo Mountain Monastery. This matter is considered satisfactory." Zhang Yan smiled and said meaningfully, "Although I obtained the stone, this matter is not necessarily over." Elder Peng's expression changed. He then nodded and looked elsewhere. After thinking for a while, he said, "My friend, there's nothing else for me to do here. I still have some trivial matters to attend to in Green Jade Palace. I'll take my leave first." Zhang Yan nodded slightly and said, "Thank you for your help today, fellow Taoist." Elder Peng said with a smile, "Don't mention it. Speaking of help, it was you who helped me first. If you have time, don't forget to visit Green Jade Palace." Then, he also said with a smile, then called the people in Green Jade Palace, returned to the spiritual boat, and headed toward the myriad empty realm ring. Seeing that the matter was settled, Ao Shao and the 4 heavenly masters also came up to bid farewell to him and left one after another. Only Taoist Tong Guang and Guo Juing were persuaded to stay. Although the two of them did not expend much of their magic power, they had lost a clone. Since the people of Luo Mountain Monastery had not been completely killed, they did not know what would happen. Therefore, the two of them went into the skyscraping spiritual boat to meditate and recover their magic power as soon as possible. After everyone left, Zhang Yan looked toward the cave abode where the mystic stone was placed. He pondered for a while, then waved his sleeve. His Taoist robe fluttered, and he landed inside. Chapter 1585. As soon as Zhang Yan entered the cave abode, a ray of clear light came towards him. It was the clone that he had left here merging with him. Just as he was about to walk forward, he suddenly felt something strange. He stopped and turned his head to look at a certain place. He saw that there was a ravine that had been created by the waves during the battle. Inside the ravine, there were specks of scattered golden light that were constantly flickering. He focused his gaze for a moment and realized that they were drops of golden water. He stretched out his hand and pulled them over. After looking at them, he recognized what they were. This is the treasure that Master Xian Hong used to destroy the clones of the perfected ones just now. He didn't have enough magic power and couldn't completely integrate it into the water, so these are all that's left. He found that even though the treasure had been scattered, it still contained a trace of great power. He thought to himself, this was left behind by the patriarch after all. I can't let it be scattered outside. So he put it in his sleeve and looked around. Seeing that he didn't miss anything, he continued forward. The deeper he went, the tighter the restrictions around him became. When he came to the front of the giant wall, he looked up and took a step forward. He passed through the wall like a shadow and entered the cave inside. Then he walked through a long tunnel and arrived at the deepest part of the cave. He looked around. This was where the Xian stones were originally placed, and it was the place with the tightest restrictions. Even if it wasn't personally set up by the great underworld patriarch, it was still related. Due to the abundance of spiritual energy here and the strong restrictions, this was actually a good cave abode for cultivation. At this moment, he suddenly noticed that there were some shallow marks on the stone wall in front of him. They looked very unusual. However, it was neither an erosion rune nor a talisman, so he couldn't tell what it was for the time being. He thought about it for a moment. Since it could appear here, it couldn't be that simple, so he memorized it and prepared to study it in depth when he had the time in the future. Seeing that there was nothing else worth paying attention to, he came out and returned to the skyscraping Dharma boat. Standing in the main hall, he raised his sleeves and took out the array disc, then threw it downwards. After the item landed on the ground, a pillar of light rose up from the plate, revealing the situation inside. He Xianyin was no longer trying to break through the restrictions. Instead, he was sitting there cross-legged. It was obvious that he knew he couldn't force his way out. Zhang Yan said indifferently, Jinren He, Master Xianhong has been killed by a Luo Mountain Monastery can be said to be destroyed. What choice do you have now? He Xianyin's heart couldn't help but tremble. He understood that these were not empty words. If Master Xianhong had won, then he would have been dragged out by now. However, he said, I don't believe it. Zhang Yan pointed at the center of the formation, an array of light flashed. Then, just now, the scenes of the past reappeared one by one. After He Xianyin finished reading, she said after a while, What do you want? Zhang Yan said, Luoshan Monastery defied the will of the founder. Anyone involved in this matter must be punished, including Jinren He. He Xianyin didn't say anything. Zhang Yan's eyes flickered. If he didn't say anything, then it meant he didn't have the intention to die. Then it would be easy to explain. He continued, although Luoshan Monastery has been destroyed, it is not appropriate for such a large Xianhong heaven to be left unprotected. When the time limit of the founder's restriction is up, it will definitely dissipate. However, it will only take a few hundred years. To us, it is right in front of us. Jinren He has already cultivated to the middle of the third layer. If you are willing to admit your past mistakes, switch to Enlightenment Crossing, and swear to guard this world, I can allow you to live and won't impose too many restrictions on you. He Xianyin raised his head and said, What if I don't? Zhang Yan smiled faintly and didn't answer. He Xianyin lowered his head and pondered. Zhang Yan's guess was right. He really didn't want to die like this. It was just that he originally hoped to obtain the profound stone and then have a glimpse of the true Yang realm. However, now he was forced to take the dangerous path of Enlightenment Crossing. He was very unwilling and even a little humiliated. However, he was a person who knew how to weigh the pros and cons. Back then, he knew that using the secret method of the monastery to enter the third layer too early would cause his state of mind and foundation to be unstable. However, under the persuasion of Master Xianhong, he still took this step. As for the other fellow disciple who competed with him, because he was more conservative and unwilling to do so, he missed the opportunity and probably lost his life in the battle just now. Therefore, he deeply knew that once he made the wrong choice, there would be no chance for him to start over. After he made up his mind, he bowed and said, I am willing to agree to Jinren Zhang's conditions. Zhang Yan nodded and with a wave of his sleeve, he threw a contract into the formation. He Xianyin reached out and took it. Without any delay, he immediately bound his essence and primordial essence on it and then took a few steps back. Zhang Yan waved his hand and took the contract back. After taking a look, he put it away and then took out a spell to remove the formation plate. He said, Jinren He, take care. He Xianyin bowed and retreated without saying a word. After leaving the spiritual boat, he turned into a ray of light and flew away. Soon, he disappeared into the horizon. Zhang Yan turned around and went up the jade platform. He sat down on the main seat and thought to himself, now that I have the profound stone, I can come down and get some benefits for the sect. The interests of the sect and his personal interests were, in fact, two separate matters. For example, if he had not come back to retrieve the profound stone, how could he have obtained such an opportunity if he was not a disciple of the Qinsang school? After he reaped the benefits, he naturally had to repay the sect. Moreover, having a powerful sect behind him had great benefits. At least, it would be convenient for him to go anywhere. For example, if the Dark Azure sect was like the Green Jade Palace and stood above the heavens, there would be no need for him to borrow strength from other places. He only needed to ask for help, and there would be many disciples who would go to work for him. And right now, there was a chance to quickly strengthen the sect. The Yuhuan Heaven's good deeds method could easily exchange for external medicine and precious materials from the Golden Hall of Imperial Edict. As long as this system could be maintained, the Qinsang school and even the sects of the 9 continents would be able to obtain benefits from this place continuously. However, if all of this was overthrown, then all his plans would be in vain. Therefore, it was necessary for him to stand on Elder Peng's side and help him deal with his enemies. In his plan, Xian Hongtian was also one of the more important links. It was the foothold of the sects of the 9 continents in the Yuhuan Heavens. The reason why He Xianin was spared was because of this. Although the head of the Luoshan monastery and many of the mortal metamorphosis Shangzhen were killed, there were still a large number of disciples left in the sect. There were also a few unknown numbers of people from the lower worlds. The matter of the profound stone had little to do with them, so it was not good to deal with them all at once. Moreover, He Xianin was familiar with the affairs here and could pacify people's hearts. In this way, all the cultivators in the inner worlds could be used by the Qinsang school in the future. Just as he was deep in thought, he suddenly looked down the stairs and saw a gust of Yin wind blowing in the hall. Then, a Taoist appeared and bowed to him respectfully. Peng Xiang pays his respects to Shangzhen. Dispense with the formalities, Zhang Yan said. He took a look and nodded. You've made some progress. Peng Xiang respectfully said. Peng Xiang listened to Shangzhen's orders and didn't deal with those cultivators. He only went after those fierce demons. They are really easy to deal with, but there are some evil demons that are strange and not easy to deal with. When Zhang Yan heard him mention evil demons, he was moved and asked a few questions. However, Peng Xiang had little contact with them, so he didn't know much. Since that was the case, Zhang Yan didn't want to delve into it and said, I called you back this time to monitor Xian Hongtian and the other lower worlds. If you find anyone colluding with the outside world, you can deal with them immediately. There's no need to ask for my permission. Although there was a restriction formation that prevented cultivators from the other lower worlds from entering, it didn't mean that the disciples of the inner worlds wouldn't take the initiative to contact people from the outside world. After all, He Xianin was still a bit unwilling. He couldn't count on her to do things sincerely, but he also wouldn't really entrust the important matters of the lower worlds to her. This was just an arrangement on the surface, a pretense. In the dark, he arranged for Peng Xiang, a genuine demon who could see through people's desires, to ensure the stability of this lower world. Zhiwang Tian, the Heart Calamity Cave. Heavenly Maiden Han Xiao Xiao arrived at the bottom of the jade steps and bowed to the 7-colored rainbow on the platform. She said, Mother, I've settled fellow Taoist Gong down, and Uncle Master Li is watching over him. Without your orders, he won't be able to leave my Chiwang heaven. Heavenly Master Han Su's voice came down. That will be the arrangement for now. How is Luo Mountain Monastery now? Did you find out? Han Xiaoying said, there is a restriction formation outside Xian Hongtian, so no one knows what happened. However, Taoist Peng, Heavenly Master Ao, and the others all returned to their own territories, so they didn't suffer any losses. Luo Mountain Monastery might have been destroyed. Han Su pondered and said, if that's the case, the mystic stone should be in Taoist Zhang's hands. Han Xiaoying couldn't help but say, before he obtained the mystic stone, Mother told me not to touch it. Now that it's in his hands, are we still going to wait? Han Su said, you want it, and so does he. It's not appropriate to wait at this time. Han Xiaoying sighed and revealed a disappointed expression. Are we still going to wait? Han Su said patiently, Peng Xinhu has been ostracized for thousands of years. Now that he's suddenly promoted, and he's willing to help Taoist Zhang, the two of them must have a deep connection. Maybe the mystic Green Jade Palace will also have to share the mystic stone, and even the 5 heavenly masters might be involved. This force is huge, so what do you have to compete with them? Han Xiaoying was also afraid of this force. She bit her lips and said, Didn't Heavenly Master Jueyuan Heaven just send a letter, asking Mother to join forces with them and use the Mystic Stone as an excuse to deal with the Mystic Green Jade Palace? Han Su said, there's no need to be so anxious now. As long as I don't make it clear which side I'm on, the two families will try to rope me in and not force me. As long as we wait, there will be a day when the situation becomes clear. It's not too late to make a decision then. She actually still had doubts in her heart. The palace master of Green Jade Palace was only missing, but it might not be true that he was gone. She didn't have any friendship with Heavenly Master Jueyuan Heaven. If she joined in now, she wouldn't get many benefits, but there would be many consequences. However, taking advantage of this special moment, all the realms were trying to fight for their own interests, so she couldn't just sit back and do nothing. She thought, it's time to visit some people. Chapter 1586. After Zhang Yan explained many things to Peng Xiang, he sat there to adjust his magic power and circulate his qi. Just now, he had just gone through a great battle and killed many enemies. He had especially defeated Master Xian Hong in the end. He had used up a lot of his magic power and was prepared to explore the Mystic Stone after his essence and qi foundation had recovered. After a few days, he returned to his perfect state and went to the restrictive formation in the hall. At this time, a servant came in and reported, Master, the two sect masters have come out of seclusion. Master, do you want to see them? Zhang Yan thought for a moment and said, go and invite these two here. The servant outside the door answered and left. Not long after, Daoist Tong Guang and Guo Juying came together. After greeting each other, Zhang Yan invited the two of them to take a seat and said, fellow Taoists, have you ever considered moving your sect to Black Flood Heaven? Daoist Tong Guang didn't answer immediately, but Guo Juying said without hesitation, my Mize's sect is willing. Guo Juying and the upper echelons of the sect were trapped in the ruined lands for 1,000 years. After returning to Sinful Heaven, they found out that the sect was occupied by others. Although they took it back, they still faced many threats and weren't truly safe until now. In his opinion, it was better to move to Xian Hong Heaven. There were many blessed lands of spirit opportunity here and the restrictive formation was complete. Whether it was the current or future development of the sect, it was much better than the original place. Zhang Yan saw that Daoist Tong Guang seemed to be considering and said, Daoist Tong Guang, I know that Tambua sect stands aloof from worldly affairs and I don't need your sect to fight for me. I just want to protect the ancestral master's teaching grounds. Luo Mountain Monastery isn't the orthodoxy of the ancestral master and doesn't deserve this title. But your two sects are quite suitable. Guo Juying also persuaded, fellow Taoist, even if you don't look for trouble with others, it doesn't mean that others won't look for trouble with you. Can't you see that Yu Huan is about to cause a huge change in the myriad heavens? Even if your sect doesn't want to get involved, in terms of stability, where else can compare to Xian Hong Tian? Daoist Tongguang pondered for a while longer before nodding. Alright, I'll make a trip back to Desolate Heaven and move my sect here. However, I'll have to trouble you in the future. Zhang Yan smiled faintly and said, we are from the same sect, how can we disturb each other? Guo Juying said, Zhenren Zhang, I recently received a letter saying that the Jin Di sect has appeared again in the days that I left. Fortunately, I have already instructed the disciples not to go out on their own before I return, so I did not fall into their trap. At this point, he rebuked, this person appears frequently and seems to be everywhere. His actions are even more despicable than the Luo Mountain Monastery. Although the Mount Luo Monastery looked down on collateral sects, they never interfered. If one ignored their attitude, it could be said that they lived in harmony with each other. However, the Jindi sect's actions were very hateful and hostile. They used all kinds of methods to force others to accept them as the orthodox sect. This was not only in name, but also in substance. For example, the Milky Lake sect had almost been snatched away by them. Daoist Tongguang frowned and said, what is this person trying to do? The Tambua sect was located in Xianyang Heaven. There were not many people in the sect, and they rarely interacted with the outside world. He knew of this sect, but he had not had any formal contact with it, so he knew very little about it. Zhang Yan deduced that the Jindi sect was supported by a force behind them. Their purpose was not to target the mystic stones, but to make an issue out of it. This person had always acted in the name of the great underworld founding master. If it was really the teachings of the founding master, then it was fine. If it was not, then they could not be allowed to continue existing like this. Previously, he was busy with karma points and mystic stones, so he had no time to deal with this sect. Now, he could take the time to deal with this matter. After thinking for a while, he said to Guo Juiying, I will send a doppelganger to follow you back. At the same time, I will investigate this person's background. Guo Juiying stood up and bowed, saying, Thank you for your care, fellow Taoist. Zhang Yan said that it was no big deal, and said, regarding the relocation of the sect, it is better to do it as soon as possible. There is no ritual or altar in Xianyang heaven that is specially used to worship the founding master. When the sects arrive, we will build one together. Both of them looked solemn and nodded in agreement. After sitting for a while, the two of them bid farewell and left. Zhang Yan stood up and looked outside with his hands behind his back. Elder Peng was already prepared to actively promote the karma point system. Guo Juiying's judgment was not wrong. An upheaval in the heavens was unavoidable, and some things should indeed be prepared earlier. First, he had to strengthen the foundation of Xianyang heaven. In his consideration, not only the Tanbua sect and the Milky Lake sect, but also the Mingjues sect and other sects with proper status. Then, he could let them choose their disciples to impart their teachings, so as to weaken the influence of Mount Luo Monastery as much as possible. Apart from that, there was another matter that needed to be settled. Those who caused trouble for him previously, he did not intend to let them off easily, and would eventually find them one by one. However, just now, he had obtained the mystic stone. There were many eyes in the heavens that were staring at him. Although he was not afraid, he also understood that it was not a good time to go out. Once Elder Peng made a move, he would deal with them all at once. At this moment, an attendant came in from outside and bowed, saying, Master, a Jinren from Mount Luo Monastery has arrived. He said that he is here to pay a visit to Master under the orders of Jinren He. Zhang Yan stood still and said without turning his head, Let him in. Not long after, an outstanding-looking Taoist in his 30s walked into the hall. Judging from his chi, he was a grotto heaven cultivator. After this person came in, he did not dare to raise his head. He respectfully bowed to the hall and said, I am Lin Budong, a disciple of Master He. This time, I am here under the orders of Master He to deliver all the purple pure external medicine in my monastery. Excluding Guru Xianhong, there were 10 metamorphosis mortal cultivators in Mount Luo Monastery. The amount of purple pure spiritual vigor they used for their cultivation was not small. These external medicines were not all obtained by themselves, but also by sending their disciples out to earn karma points. Although Mount Luo Monastery was protected by a restrictive formation, it did not exist in isolation. However, in the outside world, it had to rely on the name of Great Underworld Patriarch. This was also one of the reasons why it needed to be a righteous sect. Because the time limit of 1,000 years was approaching, in order to prevent accidents, they had indeed accumulated a lot of external medicine. Unfortunately, in the previous battle, Master Xianhong took away a lot, and most of the unused ones were destroyed in that battle. However, there were still some left in the sect's storage, and the number was actually not small. After checking, they were all sent over. Zhang Yan nodded slightly. It seemed that he had made the right move to let He Xianin manage Mount Luo Monastery. At least he was very tactful and knew what he should do. He said, Put everything down. You can go back now. Lin Budong hurriedly shook his sleeve, and a billowing smoke floated away. When it dissipated, there were more than 1,000 jade jars in the hall. He bowed again and retreated. Zhang Yan turned around, took a look, and ordered the attendants to carry everything down and put it away. Then, he stepped into the cave room, and with a thought, the surrounding restrictive formation began to rotate. He sat on the cattail hassock, and then took out the glazed jade box with the black stone. He flicked his sleeve and closed the lid of the box. There was a perfectly round black stone inside. When he looked at it, it floated up and hovered in front of him. However, looking at it, he didn't feel anything special about it. He pondered for a moment before reaching out and slowly grabbing it. Boom! Right at this moment, a strange scene suddenly appeared in front of him. It was as if he had suddenly entered a mysterious cave. His body was constantly moving in a certain direction, and he didn't know where he was going. There were countless fragments of light and specks of starlight around him, and they were constantly converging on his body. A mysterious feeling arose in his heart. It was as if all things in the world, including the heavens, were revolving around him at this moment. It was as if a long time had passed, but also as if only a moment had passed. When Zhang Yan opened his eyes, he discovered that he was still sitting in the cave. It was as if everything he had seen earlier was just an illusion. However, he knew that it was all real, because in his consciousness, there was now an incomparably profound cultivation technique. There were no words, no description, and no specific cultivation method. He could only sense where it was, and as long as he followed its will, he would be able to use it to cultivate. If the black stone fruit was related to the true yang stage, then he might be able to step into the true yang stage. However, he did not immediately start cultivating, because he had a feeling that once he started, there would be great karma. However, he could not judge whether this was good or bad. This was actually more inappropriate than learning about bad news, because he could not make the right choice based on it. He flipped his wrist and opened his palm, but it was empty. There was no trace of the black stone fruit. However, after he looked at it for a moment, it reappeared in front of him. When he looked away, it disappeared again. It seemed that he could only see it when he wanted to see it, or else it did not exist. However, this was also a good thing. At least, based on the current situation, no one could take it away without his permission, because they could not find it at all. He pondered for a moment. Due to the inexplicable feeling in his heart just now, he did not immediately start cultivating the cultivation method. Instead, he decided to be more cautious. He thought to himself, this feeling can't be without reason. Yukuan has been here for 1,000,000 years and once followed the patriarch. Perhaps I can get the answer from him. Thinking of this, he stood up and waved his sleeve. He came out of the skyscraping spirit boat and turned into a clear light that shot into the sky. Not long after, he broke through the void with a bang and arrived at the forbidden formation outside the mysterious Hong Heaven. He looked around. Although the Luo Mountain Monastery had been destroyed, the formation was still there, and it seemed that because he had sacrificed to the patriarch, the weakening had decreased a little. This time, he did not take out the jade seal of the Duzhen Hall Master. With just a thought, a path appeared in front of him. He could not help but nod. It seemed that whoever had the black stone fruit was the master of the forbidden formation. He leaned forward, and with a flash of clear light, he passed through the formation in an instant. As soon as he stood still, he saw a behemoth coming over. It was Yukuan, who walked up to him and said, "Zhang Shangzhen, you're here. Did you get the black stone?" Zhang Yan nodded and said, "Yes, but there are some things I don't understand about this thing, so I need to ask you." Chapter 1587. Yukuan said, "What does Shangzhen want to ask?" Zhang Yan said frankly, "After I obtained the mysterious stone, I comprehended a nameless mysterious technique from it. It's just that I felt that this technique might be related to a great cause and effect. Thinking that you used to follow the patriarch, I thought you might know the reason behind it, so I came to ask for advice." Yukuan did not answer his question directly, but said, "Shangzhen, you can ask for the technique first, then the technique." When Zhang Yan heard that, his heart moved slightly, and he nodded. He could feel that he could collect an infinite amount of Weili from the Xian stone, and this might be the resources to achieve true yang in the future. Yukuan said so, it meant that he did not need to cultivate the qi circulation technique, and only cultivated the external technique. Just now, he had cut off his past and future body not long ago, so he did not need to rush to improve. He could first build a solid foundation, and then climb up. But at the same time, he also heard that his previous concerns should be right. There was indeed some cause and effect here that could not be easily touched, but Yukun seemed to be unable to say it clearly for some reason. He pondered for a while. Yukun was left by the founding master, so he would not go against the founding master's will, so this cause and effect did not come from the founding master, but it might involve other people or things. When he thought about this, he had a vague understanding. Yukun said at this moment, since Shengjin got the Xian stone, you can already make a contract with me. Zhang Yan was slightly surprised. Make a contract? Yukun said, Shengjin will know at a glance. At some point in time, a ray of light shone from its body, and a jade scroll was floating and rolling in the room. When Zhang Yan saw it, he took it over and opened it in front of him. It was a contract, and the content was not something that bound both parties, but it stated that Yukun was willing to provide him and his disciples with the convenience of cultivating and traveling in the void, and he also needed to protect his people after he succeeded. At this moment, he just now knew that Yukun's name was Ying Zhao. This spell contract could be considered to be a win-win for both parties, and from the looks of it, he benefited more from it, so he had no reason to reject, so he said, so it's fellow Ying, I am willing to make this contract with fellow Ying. As he spoke, he raised his finger and drew a line on it. The spell contract was established and the jade booklet was split into two. The two halves flew towards each other. Ying Zhao took the jade booklet back and seemed very happy. He said, May Jinren come into my body. The surrounding light spread out, and the light on his body spread out and sprinkled down. Zhang Yan lightly smiled and stood on the rainbow of light. In the blink of an eye, he was already standing on a boundless swamp. What entered his eyes were islands of various sizes that were scattered like stars in the sky. In the sky, there were many floating islands. The layout of this place was somewhat similar to the Great Dragon Lake Pool. It was hard to imagine that this place was actually within Ying Zhao's body. At this moment, Ying Zhao's voice rang in his ears. Back then, when the ancestral master traveled to the void, he would meditate in this cave abode. After the ancestral master left, a few more disciples came here. The last one to arrive here was exalted Sun Yu. All the treasures and external medicines here were left behind by him. Zhang Yan looked around. The layout of this place was mysterious, and the spiritual vigor was abundant. Especially when he sensed that there were many places where spiritual vigor gathered, it was really surprising. Ever since he entered this place, there was no innate chaotic vitality light coming in, which meant that the junior disciples in the sect could also cultivate here. He had a sudden thought. Ying Zhao wandered on top of the past and the future. It could transform into thousands of forms. Even ordinary cultivators could borrow its help to travel in the void and explore the outside world. In that case, there was no need to trouble the Shengjin of the sect anymore. Back then, the founding master and a group of disciples rode on a giant kun to travel in the void and traveled to the myriad of worlds. When they were free, they would talk about the mysteries and techniques, and breathe in and out spiritual energy. Thinking about this, he couldn't help but sigh. I didn't expect the founding master to leave such a good place. From this, it could be seen that the Luo Mountain Monastery was indeed not the orthodox sect. Yukun Ying Zhao had been guarding this place for millions of years, but he never let anyone from this sect enter this place. Obviously, he never treated them as one of his own. Boom! Just as he was thinking, a huge creature emerged from the ocean. It looked like a fish and a rhinoceros. It had no scales or fur, and its eyes were small and were located at the top. Its body was so big that one couldn't see the end of its body. It seemed like it could touch the universe if it raised its head. At this moment, a simple movement set off waves of water that surged in all directions, and then it caused dramatic changes in the weather far away. Ying Zhao's voice sounded again, Shengjin, this creature is called Tun. It lives by eating dragons and lives in the water. It is a big beast that the few Shengjin caught from the desolate world. There are many of such big beasts here. If Shengjin doesn't like them, you can give them away. Zhang Yan looked at it indifferently. Although the huge beast was powerful, it was nothing in his eyes. Even the big demons that died in the Yi Haitian founding master's abode were not inferior to this huge beast, so they were not worthy of his attention. At this moment, he glanced at a palace somewhere on Fakian Island. The layout was similar to the Duzhan Hall. With a thought, he flew over there and entered. Seeing that the layout of this place was to his liking, he felt that he could make this place his home. He walked a few steps and came to the main seat. After he sat down, he waved his sleeve and a ray of spiritual light soared into the sky. The restriction inside and outside the hall were activated. He sensed it carefully. Compared to cultivating in other places, there was not much difference other than the abundance of spiritual opportunity. He thought that maybe he could try the use of the dark stone here, so he looked forward. After a moment of concentration, the dark stone appeared out of nowhere and floated there. After sensing it for a while, he tried to guide it. He felt that a pure and untainted chi of vitality was drawn over and poured into his body. This wasn't much different from refining external medicine in the past, but its effects were much better. With just a little bit of this water, his vital energy was rising continuously. He immediately felt that this time, it was the chi of vitality that grew. It was the foundation that benefited, but with this as the foundation, he could cultivate more power. This meant that as long as there was an untainted chi in the outside world, his mana could increase infinitely in the future. This was somewhat similar to the Duju cultivator, but because the foundation was also strengthened, there would not be a situation where he could not control his mana, and there would not be a turning point in his foundation. He thought that this was to build a foundation for his cultivation in the future. From this point of view, it was no wonder that there was no hope of advancing after entering the Duju realm. The land of the pool could never contain the huge flow of the ocean. As his chi dynamic gradually grew stronger, his mind was also immersed in it. It was only when his heart suddenly moved that he came out of it. He made some calculations and found that 3 years had passed in just a short period of seclusion. Thinking that there might be many changes in the heavens after such a long time, he came out of seclusion. With a thought, he was already outside. After bidding farewell to Yu Kuaning, he returned to Xianhong Heaven through the 10,000 empty world ring. Then, he stepped into the void and returned to the skyscraping Dharma ship. Then, he found the servant of His Highness and asked about the recent situation. The servant said, 2 years ago, Tanbua sect and Milky Lake sect entered Xianhong Heaven safely. Reverend Chu Yun has arranged their territories according to Master's instructions before you left. Now, they are all cultivating in their respective cave abodes. He took out 2 jade talisman from his sleeve and said, the first one was sent by Green Jade Palace a few months ago, and the second one was sent half a month ago. Please take a look, Master. Zhang Yan took them all. He first opened the letter from Green Jade Palace and glanced at it. As expected, this was sent by Elder Peng. The letter mentioned that several heaven lords had recently taken in the few cultivators who escaped from Mount Luo Monastery. They used Green Jade Palace's robbery of the mystic stones as an excuse to ask Elder Peng to hand over the mystic stones and return Xian Hongtian to the cultivators of Mount Luo Monastery. Of course, Elder Peng would not agree to this. However, most of the battles between the two were concentrated in Wujue Heaven. From this, it could be seen that although there was a conflict between the two sides, their intentions were the same. They were thinking of ways to attack the surrounding areas and slowly eat away at the forces of other heavens to strengthen themselves and force them to take sides. In this case, the battle in Wujue Heaven was actually very crucial. This was the first battle between the two sides. The winner might not be able to laugh until the end, but there was no doubt that the winner was more deserving to rely on. Zhang Yan continued to read. In the letter, Elder Peng asked when the Golden Hall could be built in Xianhong Heaven. Previously, he had promised that he would promote the good deeds system in Xianhong Heaven. This would require the Golden Hall of Appointment to be built in Xianhong Heaven. This way, the disciples in the heavens would not have to go to Green Jade Palace to exchange for good deeds every time. He thought for a while and asked the servant, "Where is he Xianin now?" The servant bowed and replied, "Master, since 3 years ago, Immortal Chu has been in seclusion. I have not seen him come out." Zhang Yan nodded. It seemed that he Xianin was already cultivating the art of enlightenment. Based on his previous understanding of this art, it would take at least 10 years for him to succeed. When Xianyin came out, he could use his name to announce that Xianhong Heaven officially accepted the art of good deeds. Then, he would denounce the person who escaped as a traitor. However, before that, he had to inform Elder Peng that the Golden Hall could be moved into the heavens. He then brought the second letter. This was a letter from the Jade Talisman that he had left in Minju's sect. He opened it and as expected, the person who sent the letter was Zhou Zhongxian. In the letter, the entire Minju sect had followed Zhang Yan's instructions and was prepared to come out from Shihai Heaven to Xianhong Heaven. Ao Shao had also agreed to let them go. However, a few days ago, Ao Shao went out for some reason and handed over the affairs of the sect to his younger brother, Ao Shen. Ao Shao was not as kind as he used to be and ordered that no one from Minju's sect should leave the Heavens realm. Otherwise, they would be beheaded. Previously, a few elders were harvesting medicine outside and could not return in time. Thus, he used this as an excuse to kill them. Minju's sect felt that they were powerless to resist, so they sent a letter to report. Zhang Yan raised his eyebrows. Something must have happened in Shihai Heaven. However, with Ao Shao's ability, he was already at the top of the Yuhuan Heavens. No one could scheme against him. On the surface, it seemed that his younger brother had done this on his own when he was not around. He thought for a while and took out a spell to create a doppelganger. After saying a few words, the doppelganger bowed and flew away in a ray of clear light. Chapter 1588. Zhang Yan sent a doppelganger to Yi Heishan, thinking that it should be enough to deal with the matter there. He pointed again, and a talisman appeared. With a flick of his finger, it flew out. This was a letter to Elder Peng, so that he could come to Xianhong Heaven to set up the Golden Hall. After doing this, he stood up and took out the Two Realms dial. He placed it on the table and reached out to press it. After a few breaths, a spiritual light appeared and sect leader Qin's figure appeared inside. Zhang Yan bowed and said, "Disciple greets sect leader immortal." Sect leader Qin looked at him for a moment, and said in surprise, "Hall Master Duzhen's cultivation seems to have improved greatly." Zhang Yan replied, "There are some gains." This time, disciple successfully retrieved the item left by the founder, and also benefited a lot from it. Sect leader Qin nodded and said, "Hall Master Duzhen is indeed the fated person that the founder spoke of." Zhang Yan said, "Disciple has something to report to sect leader. Xianhong Heaven is now in my hands, and when the situation in Yuhuan Heavens is settled, our sect may be able to benefit from it." After that, he briefly recounted what had happened in the past few days, and also explained in detail the method of karma points and the various rules set by Green Jade Palace. Sect leader Qin's eyes lit up, and he also saw the benefits in it. Although the mountain and sea realm had a lot of precious materials and external medicine, and it seemed like it would not run out even after millions of years, but with the lesson of the 9 continents, they had to be more cautious, and not do something like draining the pond to catch the fish. In Qinghua Heaven, external medicine could be exchanged with only karma points, and all of this was built on the countless void realms in Yuhuan Heavens. It could be said that there was no shortage of external things for cultivation. If used well, it could indeed bring great benefits to the sect. He said in a low voice, "If the method of karma points is completed, it can strengthen our sect, and bring good fortune to our fellow Taoists." When he spoke up to hear, he solemnly said, "I understand Hall Master Duzhen's intentions, but be careful. If there's anything you need to use, just let me know. No matter what it is, the sect will provide support." Zhang Yan cupped his hands and said, "Many thanks to sect leader Zhenren, disciple will understand." With his current cultivation, he was not afraid of any heaven master of Yuhuan Heavens, not to mention that he had the Green Jade Palace as his ally. On the surface, it seemed that there were few who could rival him. However, Yuhuan Heavens was a deep pool. There were many realms fighting inside, and there were demons and ferocious monsters outside. It would not be surprising if any accidents happened. If it was necessary, he might really need to borrow the strength of his sect, especially the Shiyuan mysterious cave that had the ability to destroy a realm. Apart from true Yang almighty figures, no one would be able to resist it. He pondered a bit and then said, "Sect leader, disciple has been gone for a long time. How is the situation in the inner realm?" "Everything in the mountain and sea realm is stable," said sect leader Qin. "With my help, the Yunshu realm hasn't made any big moves. However, if there are any unforeseen events, I'll immediately notify Temple Lord Duzhen." Zhang Yan nodded slightly. After saying a few more words, he bid farewell to sect leader Qin. When the spiritual light on the dial faded, he put it away and returned to his cave room to continue cultivating. About half a month later, a servant came to report, "Daoist, an envoy from Green Jade Palace has arrived." "Invite him in," said Zhang Yan. Not long after, a middle-aged Daoist entered the hall and cupped his hands at him with a smile. "Zhang Shengzhen, we meet again." "So it's fellow Daoist Do," said Zhang Yan with a smile. "I didn't expect it to be you." Daoist Do said, "I was fortunate enough to have had dealings with Daoist Do several times. Elder Peng attached great importance to the establishment of the Golden Hall in Xianhong Heaven, so he sent me here to supervise the construction. In the future, I'll have to ask Daoist Do to take care of me." "Of course," said Zhang Yan with a smile. He ordered someone to find Chu Tong and said, "Fellow Daoist Chu, take Daoist Do to find a suitable place to set up the Golden Hall." "Yes, Daoist Do," said Chu Tong. Daoist Do bowed and left with him. The Golden Hall could not be set up in any random place. First, it had to be built on the earth's eye of the spiritual vein so that it would be convenient to collect spiritual opportunity. In addition, it had to open up the earth fire and build the heavenly refining furnace, where cultivators could refine instruments and elixirs. In addition, it was necessary to set up the secret formation of Green Jade Palace. Finally, it was necessary to request an edict from Qinghua Heaven to move the myriad emptiness ring closer to the Golden Hall so that it would be convenient for cultivators to travel. It would be easy to find a suitable place to set up the Golden Hall separately, but when they were all together, it was not easy. It took Daoist Do half a year to find a suitable place. After getting permission, he immediately set up the formation and moved the palace from Qinghua Heaven. Zhang Yan only said a few words about this before he no longer paid any attention to it. Every day, he would continue to absorb pure yuan qi from the profound stone to expand his own origin. As the saying goes, a boat rises with the tide. At his current level, even if his origin only expanded a little, his magic power and essence energy would still grow at an extremely fast rate. Thus, his strength was also growing day by day. He could sense that if he were to fight against those opponents from before, he would be able to easily defeat them. However, even so, according to Yun Kuan, he was far from the time to cultivate that technique. From this, it could be imagined how terrifying the might of a true Yang Almighty Being was. He thought to himself, it was no wonder that all the cultivators had embarked on the path of enlightenment. Even if their foundation was extremely solid, without the black stone to provide vitality, there would be no external medicine to push them forward. In fact, most people could not even find the way to enter the path of enlightenment because they did not have the inheritance. He did not just blindly cultivate. Every time, he would borrow the black stone and sink his spirit will into the black cave to comprehend the mysteries within. Every time, he would gain some enlightenment. Another 2 years passed in his intermittent seclusion. On this day, a servant came to report that Chu Xiao had requested to see him. Zhang Yan withdrew from his meditation and said, "Call him in." Not long after, Chu Xiao came into the cave. Just now, he felt a boundless force rush up his body, as if he had fallen into a vast ocean. He exclaimed, "Jinren." Zhang Yan saw him like this and understood that it was because his magic power had grown too fast these days and was not completely integrated. Thus, he slightly restrained his qi and signaled him to continue. Chu Xiao felt a little better and said carefully, "Jinren, the Imperial Edict Golden Hall has been built and Jinren Fenglan of Green Jade Palace has arrived in the world. I would like to invite Jinren to take a look and see if there is anything wrong so that we can make changes." When Zhang Yan heard this, he knew that Fenglan did not come for the Imperial Edict Golden Hall. There must have been some changes in the heavens in the past few years. After thinking for a moment, he said, "Go tell Zhenren Feng that I will be there in a moment." Chu Zhao accepted the order and left. Zhang Yan sat for a long time. After he had completely sorted out his qi, he came out of the cave. With a thought, he instantly broke through the void and came to the Imperial Edict Golden Hall. As soon as he arrived, Feng Lan sensed him and walked out of the hall. He smiled and raised his hand to greet him, saying, "I heard that fellow Zhang has been in seclusion for the past few years. I only hope that I did not disturb you this time." Zhang Yan smiled and chatted with him for a while. Then, he accepted his invitation and walked into the Golden Hall. At this moment, Feng Lan was shocked. During the battle at Luo Mountain Monastery, he could roughly guess the depth of Zhang Yan's cultivation. But today, he found that the latter was like a bottomless hole. No matter how he tried to sense it, it was like a stone sinking into the sea, without any response. He guessed that this was because of the mysterious stone. He could not help but feel a little envious. Although Green Jade Palace also had a true young mighty figure, it had never passed down any cultivation method that led to this path. Instead, there were many who walked on the path of enlightenment. In the past, it wasn't that no disciple had inquired about this matter, but they had only received the reply, "None of you are fated to do so." Thus, the cultivators in the palace speculated that this kind of cultivation was not only related to talent, but also some kind of special opportunity. Zhang Yan walked around the hall and saw that the layout here was almost the same as the Golden Hall in Qinghua Heaven. It was just that the rules were slightly smaller, but the restrictions around it were stronger. Without the permission of the hall master, no one could enter. Moreover, this place was backed by the 10,000 emptiness ring, and it could be said that he could get help from Green Jade Palace at any time. This was the equivalent of the realm cutting off a piece of land, and after a long time, it would definitely have a profound impact on the realm. It was no wonder that so many heavenly lords were so against it. However, he did not care about this. He was not a cultivator of this realm, and his home was the mountain and sea realm. He only treated this place as a place to stay. As long as Green Jade Palace allowed other sects to continue to exist, there would not be any major conflicts between them. However, although the Golden Hall had been set up, there was a problem. In the past, Xianhong Heaven had been run like an iron bucket. There were no ferocious monsters or demons, and in exchange for karma points, the most they could do was harvest precious medicines or present their cultivation methods. Although these were not cheap, there were relatively few ways to earn karma points. He had considered this before. Xianhong Heaven was peaceful, but there were still 4 lower realms. In the past, Luo Mountain Monastery did not pay much attention to them, and only treated them as a place to collect external medicines and precious materials. Occasionally, evil spirits and ferocious monsters would appear there. In the past, when the lower realms could not handle them, they would report to the monastery, and the monastery would send cultivators to the lower realms to eliminate them. However, since they accepted the karma points system, they could take the initiative. Just as he was thinking about it, Feng Lan took out a talisman from his sleeve and handed it over. He said, "Fellow cultivator Zhang, with this, you can enter and leave this place at any time without being hindered by the restrictions of the restrictive formations." Zhang Yan glanced at him and took the talisman. He smiled and said, "Thank you very much." Feng Lan replied seriously, "When I came out, Elder Peng took care of me. This place is under your control, and we have already overstepped our boundaries by setting up the restrictive formations. How can we set up any more obstacles here?" Zhang Yan smiled. He knew that Green Jade Palace would never set up the Golden Hall in other places, but Elder Peng had made an exception this time. It seemed like he wanted to further improve his relationship with him. He said, "Since Elder Peng left, I have been in seclusion. How is the situation in the heavenly realms?" Feng Lan sighed and said, "It was still the same as before, but unfortunately, there have been many evil spirits invading the realm recently, and they have dragged down most of my strength. Wu Ju Tian's strength is somewhat unable to withstand it." Chapter 1589. A Genius in a Second to Remember Love. We provide you with exciting novels to read. When Zhang Yan heard about the evil spirit, he knew that the current situation was not good for Green Jade Palace. Although these things would appear in other realms, most of the time, they would appear directly in Green Flower Heaven. Therefore, Green Jade Palace should feel the most pressure. In the past, if these evil spirits were not eliminated in time, the area affected would become wider and wider. Feng Lan said in a low voice, the situation in Wujue Heaven that was originally evenly matched has now been broken. If we don't get support soon, we won't be far from being driven out. Zhang Yan shook his head and smiled. It seems that you guys didn't put in much effort. Feng Lan said helplessly, although the 5 realms and Green Jade Palace have joined forces, I can't ask them to fight to the death for me. After all, the palace still needs them to hold off Yang Yugong, the Lord of Juyuan Heaven and the few people around him. Now, only Lord Ao Tian has not shirked his responsibility. Zhang Yan looked at him and said, is there anything that your sect needs eyes help with? Feng Lan said frankly, that's exactly what I'm here for. As long as the Green Jade Palace can spare some manpower, we won't be at a disadvantage in the confrontation. Therefore, can I ask the Immortal to help me eliminate the evil spirits? If you're willing, not only will the evil spirits be counted as karma points, the Green Jade Palace will also reward you handsomely. Zhang Yan smiled. There's no need for that. Green Jade Palace and I are allies. I won't sit by and watch you fall into danger. I'll help you this time. When Feng Lan heard this, he was delighted. He had seen Zhang Yan's supernatural power and supernatural power. As long as this person was willing to help, the Green Jade Palace would definitely be able to extricate itself from this difficult situation. He immediately bowed deeply and said, I thank you on behalf of the entire Green Jade Palace. Zhang Yan asked, can you tell I about the specific situation? Feng Lan sighed and said, it's not good. The evil cultivators that have returned to the outer realm are very powerful. I won't hide it from you, one of the outer realm cultivators was careless and almost lost his life. Many cultivators from the outer realm who came to the Golden Temple were also corroded. Although the evil cultivators were later expelled, this matter has been spread out, causing many people to be terrified. Recently, there have been fewer cultivators coming to the Golden Temple. Zhang Yan nodded and said, I heard Lord Ao Tian say that the evil spirits that appeared in the inner realm were mostly weak. The strong ones were mostly attracted by humans. Do they have something to do with this? Feng Lan said in a low voice, indeed. That's why I also suspect that it's very likely that Yang Yugong and the others have arranged this. Their purpose is to ruin my good name. The cultivators of the various realms had to go to the Golden Hall of Imperial Edicts to exchange for karma points. If they came here, they would be infected by the external devil, and the method of karma points would not be maintained. Although it had not reached that stage yet, no one could predict whether such a thing would happen again. Thus, the Green Jade Palace had no choice but to summon their people back to be on full alert. Zhang Yan thought about it for a while. If it was really arranged by Lord Zhu Yuan, Yang Yugong, then it was not a simple matter. He must have planned it a long time ago. After all, Green Jade Palace's restriction was not just for show. How could it allow evil spirits to invade so easily? Moreover, it had to happen at this crucial moment. This move was aimed at Green Jade Palace's weakness, forcing them to retreat. At the same time, they could take advantage of this opportunity to take Wu Juyuan into their pocket. Their move was extremely accurate. He thought about it and reminded, your sect needs to be careful when you come down. If this person has some tricks up his sleeves, it will be more than this. Feng Lan said hatefully, if it wasn't for Wang Zhikong and the others who have done almost nothing in the past 1,000 years, how could I have been led by the nose so easily? Zhang Yan nodded. That was indeed the case. Although Elder Peng had the entire Green Jade Palace behind him and seemed powerful, he had only been in the position for a short time. He did not have time to make many arrangements. On the other hand, the other side had already made hundreds and thousands of plans. Now that they were up against them, they were naturally in a passive position. He thought for a while and said, if it's just to lure evil spirits into the inner realm, it's easy to deal with it. Will there be people who collude with this person like Tang Xen? Feng Lan sighed and said, we've thought about this before. If that's the case, it's going to be a big problem. It's hard to predict what will happen in the future. We can only do our best. Zhang Yan could tell that Feng Lan was not very confident. It seemed that the evil spirits had invaded deeper than he had imagined. Perhaps there were some secrets that he was not aware of. He did not pursue the matter and only said, since Yang Yugong and the others have chosen to go against your sect, our actions might be monitored. It's not appropriate for us to travel together. Fellow Taoist Feng, you can go back first and inform Elder Peng that I will leave for your place in 2 days. I'll first deal with the evil spirits and then visit him later. After some consideration, Feng Lan felt that this arrangement was acceptable. There had been a lot of things to deal with in Green Jade Palace recently, so he came down and talked with Zhang Yan for a while. After deciding on a matter, he said goodbye and left. Before he left, he entrusted everything in the Golden Hall to Taoist Do. Zhang Yan was not in a hurry to leave. Instead, he went to the glazed jade wall. There were many things that were easier to understand through the Golden Hall. As he looked around, he found that the number of evil spirits had greatly increased in the past few years. However, he was not sure if this had anything to do with Yang Yugong and the others. Recently, the Green Jade Palace was not doing nothing. They had issued many edicts to exterminate the demons. However, the strange thing was that many cultivators died mysteriously. After a few times, there were fewer and fewer people who received the edicts. He pondered a bit and decided to accept all of them. Then he returned to the skyscraping spell boat and sent a letter to Guo Juying and Taoist Tong Guang. He said that he would be leaving the inner realm for a period of time and that he would have to trouble the two of them to take care of the inner realm. Then, he summoned Peng Xiang and said a few words to him. Peng Xiang said respectfully, I will definitely take care of this matter. Zhang Yan came down and sat for another day. After he had completely restrained his qi dynamic, he came out of his seclusion. This time, he did not ride the carriage but traveled on a conveyance light. Soon, he passed through the myriad empty ring and came to Green Jade Heaven. He took a glance. Perhaps it was because of the demons, but there were more people guarding the array door than before. But among these people, the highest cultivation level was only at the elephant realm, so none of them could see his figure. After all, no matter how important this place was, it was impossible to send mortal metamorphosis cultivators to guard it. However, in his opinion, this was good. Before he made a move, no one would know that he had already arrived in this world. He floated in the air and looked at it for a while. Then, he stepped into another myriad ring space. When he came out from the other side, he looked up and saw that there was a purplish-red crack in the sky. It was as big as an eye, and a foul aura was overflowing from it. It mixed into the surrounding spiritual vigor. This place was called the ancient Chang continent, and it used to be the place where evil demons appeared the most. Ever since a few years ago, the number of evil demons had increased. Many cultivators from the Green Jade Palace had died here, and many of them had died mysteriously. This caused the people here to be terrified. Originally, they should have withdrawn their manpower. However, there was a special spiritual herb growing in this place. It was an indispensable item for refining the great Tsingdu. Therefore, Green Jade Palace was determined not to give up. This time, they even sent 4 mortal cultivators to guard this place. Just now, the situation was slightly stabilized. However, they could only contain the situation and could not solve it completely. After Zhang Yan retracted his gaze, he identified the direction and flew towards the place where the sun rose. Soon, he landed on a white peak. There was a magnificent palace here, and he directly walked in. The security here was very tight. However, whether it was the guards or the patrolling deacons, none of them noticed him. After passing through many palaces, he quickly reached the main hall. He saw 4 Taoists discussing there. However, they all looked tired. He glanced at them and said, "Which one of you is Jinren Jiang?" When the 4 of them heard the voice, they were shocked and stood up. However, it was obvious that they had been taken care of beforehand, so they did not panic. The person standing in the middle bowed to him and said, I am Jiang Chan. Are you Zhang Shangzhen? Senior Master Feng's words are true. You will be here in 2 days. It is impolite of us not to welcome you. Zhang Yan smiled and said, this time, the situation is unique. Both Shinren Feng and I suspect that there is another reason for this evil spirit. If I came with great fanfare, it would be difficult to catch the culprit. Therefore, I came here in this way. I hope I did not disturb you. Jiang Chan hurriedly said, Shang Zhenren, you are too serious. He turned sideways and made an inviting gesture. Shang Zhenren, please take a seat. Zhang Yan nodded slightly and sat down. He then asked, Fellow Feng, you have already told me about what happened before. How is the current situation? Jiang Chan sighed and said, it's not good. There is no time to refine an artifact to search for the evil spirit. We can only remedy the situation after something has happened. These days, we have been running around and sent all our clones to guard various places. Only then did we manage to keep this continent from falling into chaos. After asking a few questions, Zhang Yan found out that the Green Jade Palace had been dealing with the evil spirits for millions of years. They had their own magic tools that could locate the evil spirits. However, every time they killed the evil spirits, they seemed to have improved when they returned. The magic tools that they used last time were useless, and they needed to refine them again. In this cycle, the evil spirits became more and more difficult to deal with. At this point, it would take at least 100 years to refine a magic tool of this level. Therefore, the cultivators of the Green Jade Palace were helpless in the face of these evil spirits. Just as they were talking, a cultivator suddenly rushed into the hall and said anxiously, reporting to everyone, Shang Zhenren. Junior Master Fu seems to have been poisoned. He is not going to make it. Jiang Chan's expression changed. He asked, where is he? The cultivator said, he is outside the hall. Jiang Chan said anxiously, hurry up and send him in. The cultivator waved his hand and a cloud rose. A cloud couch was sent in. There was a disciple lying on it. However, half of his body had strangely turned into gray stone. Moreover, it was spreading to other parts of his body. If they did not stop it, he would probably turn into a stone man. Jiang Chan's expression turned serious when he saw this. He said, the evil spirit has indeed entered his body. He took out a spell and sent a spiritual light into the disciple's body. After a while, the jade stone slowly returned to its original appearance. Zhang Yan was watching from the side. He saw that there were threads of black threads entangling the disciple's body. Although they were slowly retreating, he could feel that Jiang Chan's divine will was being consumed. He wasn't expelling all the filthy qi, but he was attracting it to his side and using his divine will to wear it out. No wonder he found the four people's qi dynamic weak when he came in. They must have done this many times recently. As he thought of this, his eyes flashed. This did not seem to be a coincidence. It seemed like there was a purpose behind it. It seemed like these evil spirits had a big plan. Chapter 1590. Genius 1 second. Remember, if you want to go. Shuanet provides you with wonderful novels to read. Zhang Yan had learned that in the past, the appearance and disappearance of evil spirits were untraceable, but what he was seeing now was different. If it was as he had guessed, then it was very likely that there were cultivators secretly colluding with them. After Jiang Chan's treatment, seeing that the disciple was fine, she ordered the cultivator just now to take care of him. Then, she turned around, cupped her hands, and said apologetically, I've made you wait for a long time. Zhang Yan replied, it doesn't matter. From the looks of it, a lot of disciples have been corrupted these days, right? The four Taoists looked at each other and smiled bitterly. Jiang Chan sighed and said, we also guessed that someone might be deliberately trying to exhaust my strength. Seeing that my disciple was injured, how could I not save him? I had no choice but to take the bait. At present, I still have great medicine to take, so I can still hold on. If I really run out of strength, I can report this matter to the palace. I believe that the palace will surely send someone else to take my place. Zhang Yan shook his head. He felt that these people were too optimistic. Normally, this would not be a problem, but what was the situation now? The Green Jade Palace lacked manpower everywhere, and Wu Juetian was still struggling to hold his ground. If the other side suddenly attacked, or if something happened to one of them, how would they have the time to care about this side? There was an even worse situation. If all of this were to erupt at the same time, it was extremely likely that they would be routed everywhere. If that really happened, then the reputation that Elder Peng had accumulated with great difficulty would be completely gone. The few worlds that were originally united might also have the intention to retreat. If worse came to worst, they might even turn to rely on Zhu Yang, Yugong and the others. At that time, Elder Peng's faction would lose everything and would no longer have the power to reverse the situation. Fortunately, all of this hadn't happened yet, so there was still a chance to salvage the situation. Many thoughts flashed through his mind, and he came up with many strategies in an instant, but they were all rejected in the end. Yang Yugong and the others had been preparing for such a long time, yet there were still loopholes. It was likely that they had purposely exposed them, or that they were not afraid of being targeted. To counterattack from the enemy's advantage would be to attack the enemy's strength with their weakness, which was extremely inappropriate. Love go small say netku, but they weren't without an advantage. Their current advantage was that the enemy didn't know he was already here. Or rather, they hadn't had the time to be on guard and were still following their usual arrangements. As long as they acted in time, they would be able to make a breakthrough. Thinking of this, he looked at the four and asked, "Fellow Taoists, what are your plans?" At this time, Jiang Chan said tentatively, "Originally, we were very worried that the evil spirit would attack us before anyone from the palace could take over. But now that the Great One is here, perhaps we can beat him at his own game and wait for him to walk right into our trap." Jiang Wen Yu Chen, Chang Yu want you to heart and Yu Feng Yu Yu. Chen Yu now long di you, you have to Feng another, Yu 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 Yu. Yu 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 want to you. Yu Feng. Yu 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 Yu. Yu 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 Yu, A, Yu Yu. Yu 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 Yu. Yu Feng Wen Yu, Yu. Jiang Chan hurriedly said, "This is just my suggestion. Marshal Uncle Feng has told me before that after Shangzhen arrives, Shangzhen can arrange everything." Zhang Yan nodded and said, "I'll have to trouble you to record down all the places where demons have appeared in the past. Also, write down the names and backgrounds of the disciples who have been harmed and present them to me. I want to read them later." Jiang Chan said, "That's easy, I'll give the order right away." He paused for a moment, then continued, "Since we knew that you would come here, we've already prepared an abode for you." However, Zhang Yan waved his hand and said, "There's no need. Today's matter is too coincidental. I suspect that there might be spies of the evil demons in my realm, so I must not let outsiders know about my arrival." Jiang Chan shivered and said, "Yes, we will obey Shangzhen's orders." After Zhang Yan finished explaining, he closed his eyes and sat there without saying a word. Jiang Chan and the others looked at each other and retreated. They knew that this matter was not small, so they moved quickly. In less than half a day, they had presented the map and the names. After Zhang Yan took it, he carefully looked at it. In the past, there was no pattern to the appearance of the evil demons, and the causes of their deaths were also strange. However, it could be seen that those who were infected were mostly ordinary people and low-level cultivators. However, in the past few years, the situation had changed greatly. Not to mention the increasing number of such cases, even many cultivators with profound cultivation had begun to be affected. However, from the behavior of the evil demons over the past million years, it could be seen that they never had any purpose. The sudden change in the situation was obviously caused by someone in the dark. From the records of the Green Jade Palace and Tang Xian, it was not difficult to see that after a cultivator colluded with the evil demons, they could control them to a certain extent. The person behind them was probably walking a similar path. If that was the case, as long as these people were found, most of the problem could be solved. However, to do this, the person's cultivation would not be low, or else they would be infected first. Therefore, they should at least be a mortal metamorphosis cultivator. There was only one person in the Guchang continent who had such cultivation. His name was Ingzheng, and he was in the mortal metamorphosis realm. This person had been guarding this place for tens of thousands of years, but because he was originally a person in charge of the sect, and his lifespan was near its end, when Elder Peng took over, he tactfully relinquished his duties and returned to the sect to cultivate in seclusion. On the surface, it seemed unlikely that it was this person, but Zhang Yan was not in a hurry to make a conclusion. Some methods could be set up in advance, and the evil demons suddenly appeared in large numbers. They must have already invaded the realm, but had not made a move yet. He did not believe that this person had not noticed anything at all. This matter could be put aside for now. If the evil demons suddenly attacked at a critical moment, then there must be a leader, and when they attacked, they must be nearby, or else it would be difficult to do as they wished. To achieve this, there were three possibilities. First, this person was not in the Guchang continent, and when the time was right, he would come from the outside with the help of the 10,000 empty realm ring and attract the evil demons. There were many advantages to doing this. Not only could it avoid the Green Jade Palace's detection, but it would also be very sudden. However, it was not without its disadvantages. The Guchang continent was actually a world of its own, and if the 10,000 empty realm ring here was sealed, they might not be able to act in time. Another was to find someone to advance to the mortal metamorphosis realm at the right time, and then attract the evil demons that were lying in ambush. This was even more secretive, but the disadvantage was that the timing was not easy to grasp, because it was extremely difficult to achieve the mortal metamorphosis realm. Even in the entire Yuhuan heavens, there were very few people who could do this. No one could be sure that they would succeed, and they had to do it within a specific time limit, which was almost impossible. The last one was that this person did not use the 10,000 empty realm ring, and directly invaded from the outside world. However, before he broke through the world, people would definitely find out, and they would be able to deal with it in advance. However, it was not impossible to deal with it. For example, he could bring a few ferocious great demons with him, and hide his own chi, or he could simply be a great demon. In this way, it would be difficult for people in the world to deal with him correctly. As for which one it would be, it was actually easy to determine. He took out the IDs of those who had been harmed by the evil demons and looked at them carefully. Not long after, his eyes flashed, and he saw some clues. Those who had been infected with the evil demons were almost all the cultivators who had originally stayed here, and none of them were brought by Jiang Chan from the Green Jade Palace. Logically, to deal with Jiang Chan and the others, they should have found disciples who were close to them, but they chose to make things difficult for these outsiders. It seemed that the evil demons had been planted in these people in advance. It was not difficult for him to prove whether this was true or not. He put away the IDs and said to Jiang Chan, who was still waiting there, "How many people from the Dongtian realm are there in Guchangzhong now?" Jiang Chan said, "Because there is pearl grass here, there are a total of 5 Dongtian realm Jinren guarding this place, and Fu Jinren, who has been infected by the evil demons just now, is one of them." Zhang Yan said, "In the next few days, find an excuse to summon these people for questioning. I want to see them personally, but don't be too deliberate." Jiang Chan was shocked, and said, "Your Majesty, do you really suspect that some of these people have colluded with the evil demons? But when I came here with a few people, I checked in advance, and there was nothing strange." Zhang Yan smiled faintly, and said, "Just do as I say, Brother Jiang." Jiang Chan did not dare to ask again, and immediately went to make arrangements. After 2 days, he used the excuse of exterminating the evil demons to summon these people from the Dongtian realm into the hall, including Fu Jinren, who had slightly recovered. At this moment, Zhang Yan was standing in the hall with his sleeves behind his back. Because he did not reflect his shadow into the world, people who had not reached the level of mortal transformation could not see him. Looking at the 5 cultivators from the Dongtian realm in front of him, as Jiang Chan had said, there was no evil demon chi on them. But if it was so easy to find out, the evil demons would have been found long ago. Divine light flashed in his eyes, and he directly used his divine will to observe these people. The lifespan of a heavenly abode cultivator was usually more than 3,000 years, and these 5 people were all more than 2,000 years old. If one wanted to clearly see everything that a cultivator had experienced for 2,000 years without missing anything, the divine intent used was enough to make an ordinary third-stage cultivator flinch. However, he was able to see all 5 of them at the same time, and he did not feel the slightest bit of strain. However, after looking down, his gaze fell on a cultivator. He had also seen this person before, as it was the one who ran in to report yesterday. He said, "Fellow Daoist Jiang, take down the person standing on the leftmost side." Hearing this, Jiang Chan did not hesitate at all. He took out an incantation, and the restriction was activated, separating him from the 4 disciples. Then, with a flick of his finger, a stream of qi flew over, and easily fixed the disciple on the spot. Then, he hesitated for a moment, and transmitted his voice, "Jinren Zhang, this is Cheng Qishu, Jinren Cheng, the official disciple of an elder in the secret palace." Zhang Yan said indifferently, "I was asked to come here by your side, and no matter whose disciple he is, as long as he colludes with the evil demons, we will definitely not let him go." Fortunately, this Jinren Cheng does not know that he has been defiled by the evil demons, and he is just being used. Jiang Chan was shocked, and said, "Who is this person?" Zhang Yan did not answer, and only looked out of the hall, and said, "I need to go to Green Jade Palace, so I will leave this place to you for the time being." Chapter 1591. Genius 1 second. Remember if you want to go. To provide you with interesting novels to read. The evil demon matter had to be dealt with as soon as possible. Zhang Yan said goodbye to Jiang Chan and the others and quickly left Guchang continent, passing through the 10,000 empty world ring and heading straight for the Cloud continent. When he was outside the formation, he greeted Elder Peng through his spirit will. Not long after, Elder Peng came out of the teleportation light and bowed. "Why are you here, fellow Daoist? Did anything happen at Guchang continent?" Zhang Yan bowed back and said, "There weren't any changes, but I did find some important clues." Elder Peng reacted quickly, looking at him and saying, "Does it involve people from my palace?" Zhang Yan nodded his head. Elder Peng's expression turned solemn. He looked around and reached out, pushing open the small world gate. "This isn't a good place to talk, please follow me." Zhang Yan followed him in and landed on a cloud peak. Elder Peng pointed his finger, and a table and chair materialized. The teacups flew in from outside and landed on the table. Not long after, the smoke from the teacups floated up, and the teacups emitted a strange fragrance. He picked up a cup and said, "Please." Zhang Yan thanked him and drank it. However, due to the huge increase in his essence energy these few years, the celestial tea that could increase essence energy didn't have much of an effect. However, he didn't come here to taste tea. After he placed down the teacup, he said, "Where is the Yingjinren who was guarding Guchang continent?" "Yingzheng." Elder Peng's face sunk. "Is there a problem with this person?" Zhang Yan said calmly, "This person should be connected to the evil demon and even planted evil in your sect's cultivators. The Guchang continent matter should be related to this person." Elder Peng couldn't help but frown. "Are you sure?" "After he returned, I was afraid that he would be infected by evil spirits, so I used many restrictions to investigate him. In the end, I confirmed that there were no abnormalities, so I allowed him to enter the sect. He came back from Guchang continent. That was a place where evil demons frequently appeared, so it was impossible for him to be careless. However, if there was really a problem, that meant that the restrictions were useless. Once that evil demon came, maybe the entire Cloud continent would be affected. This problem was really serious. Love Go Small Say Netka Zhang Yan said, "I observed his past and saw that when he colluded with evil spirits, he used a magic tool. Perhaps he chose to enter the palace alone and left this thing outside." When Elder Peng heard this, his expression relaxed a little. If that was the case, he could still accept it. After pondering for a long time, he said, "Spiritual Master, please wait here for a moment. I will be back soon." Zhang Yan smiled and said, "Fellow Taoist, please go ahead." Roughly half a day later, the world gate not far away opened and Elder Peng stepped in. However, his expression wasn't too good as he said solemnly, Ying Zheng is dead. This person seems to be prepared. Just now, I am going to search for him, but I have already lost my spiritual energy. His past seems to have been wiped out by someone, so I am unable to find where the artifact is. Zhang Yan's brows rose. Some artifacts didn't need the treasure master to control them. If they couldn't find it, it would be a huge problem. Even if the artifact didn't have such an ability, if they didn't find it, if the enemy knew where it was, then they could send another person to control it. Elder Peng thought for a while and said, Ying Zheng was able to plant evil in his fellow disciples, so it's highly possible that he has done something to some of the disciples as well. It's not easy to identify him. To be on the safe side, it seems like we can only seal off the entrance and exit of Guchangzhou. We'll only open the world gate after Yang Yugong and I have decided the victor. Zhang Yan said, fellow Taoist, you must not be careless when it comes to matters of evil. We are now in Guchang continent, but do you know if there are other places? If something like this happens again, what will Elder Peng do? Elder Peng said solemnly, then we can only play it by ear. Although his words were pessimistic, he couldn't be blamed. The Green Jade Palace had been fighting with the evil spirits for millions of years, and they still couldn't find a way to counter these things. In a hurry, they could only deal with it this way. Zhang Yan thought about it and said, no matter what, I will give fellow Taoist an explanation for Guchang continent. Elder Peng was stunned. Actually, Zhang Yan had already fulfilled his promise by finding Ying Zheng's tracks. Even if he left now, Elder Peng couldn't say anything. However, he was willing to continue. In his eyes, it was because of the friendship between the two sides that he was willing to continue. Elder Peng's expression turned serious as he bowed and said, then I will have to trouble fellow Taoist. Zhang Yan nodded and said, this is what I promised fellow Taoist. How can I back out halfway? Since he had promised Green Jade Palace, he wouldn't stop until he solved the problem. Moreover, things like evil spirits could enter Qinghua heaven now, so they could also enter Xianhong heaven in the future. If he could find the weakness of such evil, he would have a way to deal with it if he encountered it in the future. Before he left, he asked Elder Peng for a few things. Then, he bid farewell and left the small world. He returned to Guchang continent with the help of the 10,000 empty realm ring. He broke through the void and returned to the main hall. Because he didn't take long to go back and forth, Jiang Chan and the rest were still waiting for news. When they saw him, they were surprised and said, Shangzhen, you're back. Did you see Elder Peng? Zhang Yan nodded and said, although we have solved a problem this time, after discussing with Elder Peng, we believe that there are still cultivators in Guchang continent who have been infected by the evil spirits. Therefore, this matter is far from over. Jiang Chan said, then, does Elder Peng have any orders? Zhang Yan said, Elder Peng wants to isolate the entrance and exit first. I think it's feasible. Jiang Chan couldn't help but look worried. It wasn't difficult to isolate the realm ring. If it was for a short period of time, it wouldn't be a problem. However, if it was for a long period of time, it was very likely that there would be problems. One must know that there were many cultivators from the outside world here, and there were many who had evil intentions. If this generation were to provoke them a little, the people who had been appeased might become restless again. However, this matter wasn't up to him to decide. After hesitating for a while, he could only agree in the end. Zhang Yan asked again, how many disciples are stationed in the hall now? Jiang Chan replied, about 1,000. If we include the lower houses, it would be 100 times more. Zhang Yan nodded and said, that's not a lot. He thought for a moment and said, I'll borrow your hall for a while. Come to my place tomorrow, I have something to tell you. Upon hearing this, Jiang Chan's heart was filled with anticipation. This man had caught the culprit as soon as he arrived, so he must have some means to deal with evil spirits. Therefore, he bowed and said, Lord, you can stay here as long as you want. He called out to his companions and retreated to the side hall with them. With a thought, Zhang Yan condensed talismans in midair. Soon, there were tens of thousands of talismans. As time passed, the number also increased. When the entire hall was filled with these talismans, he threw out a jade box and collected them all. On the second day, Jiang Chan remembered to take care of him and came to the hall early. Zhang Yan said, before this, Yingzhen was able to use Immortal Cheng. So, any cultivator who came into contact with him could be invaded by the evil spirits. We have to solve this problem first. At this point, he handed the jade box to Jiang Chan. These are all the talismans I refined yesterday. Each talisman contains a strand of my divine will. Distribute them later. Every disciple in the hall must have at least one. Don't miss out on the cultivators from the outside world. Also, arrange for people to build altars where the living creatures of the realm gather. Once they're done, offer the talismans to me. Because the talismans were imbued with divine will, as long as the cultivators carried them with them, they would be able to detect any evil spirits coming out. Then, they would be able to mobilize more divine wills to kill them. This way, they could suppress the evil spirits to the greatest extent and earn karma points at the same time. Jiang Chan hurriedly took the box. Although he didn't show anything on his face, he was somewhat puzzled. It wasn't that no one had used this method before, but it wasn't that easy to wipe out the evil spirits. The ancient Chang province was a large world with billions of living creatures and countless mortals. This method could only wipe out a small portion of them at most, which could be used to stabilize the situation for a period of time. Based on previous examples, the situation would return to the present in a few years. In his opinion, since Zhang Yan was here to wipe out the evil spirits, he should know about this matter. But on second thought, since this person had chosen to do this, there must be a reason. All he needed to do now was to listen to his instructions. So, after bowing, he went to make the arrangements. Zhang Yan's expression was indifferent, and he didn't explain too much. He reached into his sleeve and unrolled a scroll. This was something he got from Elder Peng before he came here. It recorded in detail all the methods used to deal with the evil spirits in the past million years. To solve this problem, he still had to think of a way to restrain the evil spirits. The purpose of giving out the talismans wasn't just to destroy the evil spirits, but to better understand this object. Jiang Chan once said that these past few years had been too hasty, and he didn't have the time to refine such an instrument. But just because others couldn't, it didn't mean that he couldn't. With the broken jade in hand, if he could find a way to understand the many changes of the evil spirits, it wouldn't be difficult for him to refine it in a short period of time. But the instrument was usually used to trap the evil spirits, and it needed to be taken back after the matter was over. Although it could be used repeatedly, it could only be controlled by cultivators who had reached a certain level of cultivation. There weren't many people who could do this. If he relied solely on these people, he didn't know how many years it would take to pacify the situation. So, he decided to delay it for the longest time. Therefore, he thought about it and decided to use the method of combining elixirs and cultivation methods. From the scroll, he could see that in the past, there were many cultivators who used elixirs to exorcise the evil spirits. Although this method consumed a lot of resources, as long as one was willing to pay the price, it could be effective in an extremely short period of time. Jiang Chan's actions weren't slow. After he returned, he first sealed off all the entrances and exits, and then dispersed all the talismans within a few days. However, the altar wasn't something that could be built in a day or two. Even if he mobilized a large number of people in each boundary, it would still take at least a month's time. Zhang Yan could afford to waste this amount of time. In these few days, he had already sensed many evil spirits, but they were all weak and small. With a slight pressure from his divine will, they were easily worn away, so they weren't worth investigating. However, he knew that Yingzhen had been guarding this place for more than 10,000 years. Although he didn't know how he had colluded with the evil spirits, it must have been a long time, and he definitely had more than these little tricks up his sleeves. As long as he waited, he believed that it wouldn't be long before he would gain something. Chapter 1592. Zhang Yan stayed in the hall for 2 months. On one hand, he was calculating the method to restrain the evil spirits, and on the other, he was paying attention to the movements outside. After so many days, there were not many changes in the inner realm. At most, they only eliminated some of the evil spirits that were not a concern. With the efforts of Jiang Chan and the others, the number of altars in various places gradually increased. Wherever they were set up, if evil spirits appeared, he would immediately be able to detect it. In fact, to the evil spirits, the divine wills of cultivators were like delicacies. As long as no one colluded with them, he did not need to do anything. The evil spirits would naturally be attracted, and it would be easy to kill them. Although the problem was not completely solved, this arrangement was still useful. The evil spirits that were originally scattered everywhere were contained, and the situation in the Guchang continent was getting better day by day. However, he knew that if there was no problem, it meant that there was a problem. According to his previous understanding, there would be a large number of evil spirits appearing in the continent every 10 days to a month or so. But now that 60 days had passed, there was still no movement, and he did not sense any signs of an increase in the number of evil spirits. It was impossible to say that Ing Zhengwan's arrangements had been destroyed by him. Over the past few days, he had indeed killed a portion of the evil spirits, but he was far from being able to wipe them all out. If it was really that easy, Elder Peng would not have needed to invite him here, he could have taken care of them himself. He thought for a while. Perhaps the evil spirits were waiting for an opportunity. If that was the case, it meant that other than Ing Zheng, there was another existence that could control these things. He had previously used his supernatural power to investigate. Other than Jiang Chan and the other three, there were no other mortal cultivators in the Guchang continent. Then, it was very likely that the other party was an artifact, or even an artifact spirit. More likely, it was the artifact that Ing Zheng originally had, but it was placed in a corner here. If that was the case, as long as he found it, the matter would be settled. In the blink of an eye, another month passed. After more than 100 days of fighting with the evil spirits, Zhang Yan roughly calculated the method to deal with this person. He raised his finger and drew a line, condensing a jade talisman out of thin air, and placed it on the table. He called out. Not long after, Jiang Chan walked into the hall and bowed to him, saying, "Your Majesty, do you have any orders?" Zhang Yan waved his sleeve and threw the jade talisman down, saying, "Here is a cultivation method that can temporarily suppress evil spirits. Take it and order your disciples to cultivate it." Jiang Chan hurriedly took it and glanced at it. He found that this cultivation method was very simple. Even a junior disciple could learn it in 10 days or half a month. He tried to circulate his qi once. He had many encounters with evil spirits, so he could immediately tell that this cultivation method indeed had the effect of restraining evil and filth. Moreover, it seemed that the person who learned this cultivation method could also suppress the filth and filth of others. This made him extremely happy. He said emotionally, "Shangzhen, this cultivation method is really wonderful. It's a pity that it can only temporarily suppress evil and filth. If only it could be eradicated. Unfortunately, it can only temporarily suppress evil spirits. If it could be eradicated, it would be great." After saying that, he realized that he had made a slip of the tongue. He bowed apologetically and said, "I have lost my composure, please forgive me." Zhang Yan smiled and said, "Sage Zhang's words are not wrong at all, so why should I blame you? Speaking of exterminating evil spirits, I have also made some gains here. Sage Jiang, please summon all the alchemists in your sect later, and I will personally teach them." Jiang Chan's spirit rose, and he said, "Please wait for a moment, Your Majesty. I will be back soon." Not long after, 10 alchemists were summoned into the hall. Zhang Yan saw that their cultivation was not high, at most they were in the Yuanying realm, so he did not directly interact with them. Instead, he used his divine will and directly reflected it into their minds. In the blink of an eye, a never-before-seen alchemy method appeared in the minds of these alchemists. They could not learn this method themselves, and could only use it after observing the divine will. This was not because Zhang Yan was selfish, but because this involved the change of divine will. His cultivation was not high enough, and he could only rely on his own strength. No matter how brilliant his alchemy method was, he would not be able to do this. He said to Jiang Chan, I have already passed down the alchemy method to suppress evil spirits. As long as you have been infected with evil spirits for less than 100 days, you can take it and get rid of the evil spirits. Because the cultivation methods of the cultivators in the continent are different, the medicinal effects are also different. You must be careful not to harm the lives of the people below. Jiang Chan was now completely convinced by him. He clasped his hands and said respectfully, I will follow your Majesty's instructions. Zhang Yan looked outside. He believed that with such a strong dose of medicine, he would soon be able to force out the opponent who was controlling the evil spirit. Even if the opponent could hold back and not make a move, it would be fine. When most living beings could resist the evil spirit, the opponent would be like water without a source. Even if he wanted to make a move, he wouldn't be able to. At this moment, in the main hall of the Cloud Continent, a cultivator stood below the stairs and was reporting to Elder Peng about the recent changes in Wujua sky. Over the past few days, the sects that are close to Green Jade Palace have been losing ground. They can only defend themselves in a few large formations. If they are chased out, then Green Jade Palace will no longer be able to intervene in the matters of Dark Awareness Heaven. Right now, both sides had the same plan. They were going to support the Inner Realm cultivators and give them an absolute advantage. Then they would use the name of the Inner Realm to bring a cultivator into the Inner Realm and make him the lord of this Inner Realm. However, if the sect supporting them was destroyed, then the battle had failed and they could only retreat. Elder Peng thought about it for a moment and said, let them hold on. Without my orders, they can't leave the Inner Realm. Even if they leave, my Green Jade Palace won't take them in. The cultivator said anxiously, but if that is the case, more sects will join Yang Yogong's side. However, Elder Peng said coldly, only those who are willing to stay are the ones we can truly rely on. As for those with weak wills, it is useless for me to come. Just let them be. The cultivator sighed. Yes, disciple understands. I will send the order down now. Feng Lan, who was standing at the side, raised his head and said, Elder, more than 100 days have passed. I wonder when Daoist Zhang will have a result. Elder Peng Daoren said, how can the matter of the evil spirits be solved so easily? It wouldn't be surprising even if it takes 10 years or decades. Daoist Zhang has already captured Yingzheng and tried his best. We can't ask for more. Feng Lan frowned. But it's not that the disciples in Wujua Heaven don't want to help, and it's not that a few sects are against him. They really can't hold on any longer. Elder Peng Daoren said, how can I not know what you said? But we have already used all the means we can. We can only find a way to endure it. Feng Lan said unwillingly, unfortunately, the palace master has ordered that the elders of the secret hall can't interfere in the matters of the heavens. Otherwise, there would be no need to tangle with these people. We could have killed them long ago. Elder Peng shook his head. With the palace master's power, if you could do that, why wait until today? This is not something you and I can comment on. Feng Lan quickly bowed and said, yes, disciple has overstepped his boundaries. In a hidden cave somewhere in the heavens, several rays of light landed in the hall. It was Yang Yugong, the heaven master of Juyuan Heaven, who had once again invited the avatars of several allies here. After greeting each other, the four of them took their seats. Yang Yugong was the first to speak. I've called all of you here today to discuss the matter of Wujua Heaven. Before that, however, I have a piece of good news. The Eternal Heaven Lord is willing to work with me to fight against the Green Jade Palace. Hua and Heavenly Lord gave an oh and asked in surprise, Heavenly Lord Chang Chang. This person has never involved himself in the matters of the outside world. Why did he change his mind this time? Zhu Yu, the Zhu Zhutian Heaven Master, also arrived. He said in a deep voice, I know about this. Daoren Lin is at the juncture of the three tribulations and urgently needs the secret art of Green Jade Palace to help him pass through it. But he doesn't have enough karma points, so he came up with this idea. Huan Heaven Master said, that's strange. Green Jade Palace is in urgent need of help now. If he shows goodwill to Green Jade Palace, I believe Peng Xinhu will not be stingy, right? Zhu Yu said, Huan Heavenly Lord has guessed wrongly. The reason why Peng Xinhu started this war was to push the method of good deeds to the myriad realms. There's a rule in Green Jade Palace that the method of avoiding tribulations must be exchanged with good deeds. He can't make an exception. Yang Yugong smiled. What Zhu Zhutian Heaven Master said is not far from the truth. Eternal Heaven Master is willing to join us because he can't come to an agreement with Green Jade Palace. Huan Heaven Master, who was sitting in the east corner, said, this is indeed good news. With Eternal Heaven Master's arrival, we will have a better chance of winning against Green Jade Palace. Yang Yugong said, that's right. Eternal Heaven Master has agreed to immediately send more people to Wujue Heaven. Recently, Green Jade Palace has been held back by the evil demons and is short of manpower. The remaining people are trapped in a few formations. Once they break through, we will be able to conquer this realm. Huan Heaven Master said, if that's the case, the outcome will be decided soon. Yang Yugong said, if nothing goes wrong, that should be the case. Huan Heaven Master thought for a while and interrupted, the longer we delay, the more trouble there will be. Should we put in more effort and get rid of them in one go? However, Yang Yugong raised his hand and said, it's not time yet. We'll have to wait a little longer. We'll just attack the next realm alone. At worst, the people from Green Jade Palace can just retreat with their people. Such a setback won't hurt them much. After they've reorganized themselves, they can continue to fight with me elsewhere. We've been planning for 1,000 years. This is a rare opportunity. We must find a way to defeat them. Huan Heaven Master said, is Zhu Yuan Heaven Master still waiting for the Guchang Prefecture? Yang Yugong looked at the three of them and said, the Guchang Prefecture is very important to Green Jade Palace. Think about it. If we lose this realm after Wujue Heaven is defeated, what will happen? This will definitely cause Peng Xinhu's reputation to drop. Jianji, Huandu, Eshu, and Jiaying are not really on the same side as Green Jade Palace. When they see that they have no hope of winning, they will only be more conservative than before. By then, I can use all my strength to suppress Green Jade Palace and force them to sign the contract. Outside Green Jade Palace cannot use the karma method. That will be considered a success. Zhu Yu reminded, don't forget. When that time comes, I will join forces with you to take down Daoist Zhang. Yang Yugong and the other two looked at each other and smiled. This is what we promised Zhu Zhu Heaven Master. How can we forget? Even if you didn't mention it, we will not let go of the mystic stone. Chapter 1593. Zhu Zhutian, a colossal giant, sat at the top of a mountain range. The upper half of his body reached beyond the sea of clouds, as if he could touch the sky with a single raise of his head. At this moment, his eyes were closed, and he held his head in one hand while the other was spread out on his knees. He seemed to be sleeping soundly. On the other hand, there was a lofty palace built on his open palm. All the people that entered and exited this palace were giants that had imposing figures that were like small mountains, and every single step they took caused rumbling to resound. It wasn't just the people, even the birds, beasts, plants here were extraordinarily enormous. Besides these living beings, there were also cultivators and demons moving about in succession, and they seemed to have become accustomed to such a scene since a long time ago. In the tallest hall of the palace city, Jiu stood in a jade pavilion in a loose golden-green robe with a cloud band tied around his head. He leaned against the railing and looked out at the scenery outside. His face was handsome, his body was straight, and his eyes were deep. Those who had never seen him or didn't know anything about him would never think that the giant body outside was the body he had left behind after he had transformed into a mortal. At this moment, a ray of light flew in from outside and quickly fused into his body. In an instant, he received the news that his clone had brought from outside. He pondered for a long time before turning around and walking towards the depths of the hall. After passing through a few tens of extremely tight restrictions, he arrived at an inconspicuous stone room. Besides a stone slab that stood upright in the middle, there was nothing else here. He looked at the stone slab with a complicated expression for a long time, then walked up and untied a jade pendant from his waist. He placed it on the stone slab, and after a while, the jade pendant melted into a mercury-like liquid that slowly seeped into the stone slab. After a while, the stone slab suddenly came to life. It slowly wriggled and turned into a 3-meter-tall demon face. Its eyes opened, and it looked at Ju Yu with a strange and evil smile. "Lord Ju Tian, why are you looking for me?" Ju Yu said, "I'm just telling you to wait. Yang Yogong's plan is very good, and it won't be difficult to win this round. Peng Xinhu probably won't be able to pass this time." The face chuckled. "That's good news. But Lord Ju Tian, you know that this isn't all I want." Ju Yu replied solemnly, "I won't stop them, but I still need to ask you for a tribulation avoidance cultivation method." The face narrowed its eyes, and its smile became even more ferocious as it said, "What? Was what I gave you before not enough?" Ju Yu was not afraid at all. He said, "If I want to do what you said, I need to at least have the power to suppress a region. Now, I have only gone through 3 tribulations. Not to mention that old dragon, Yi Heishan, even Heaven Lord Yang Yogong's mana is above mine. How am I supposed to do what I said?" The face smiled eerily and said, "That's easy. As long as you cultivate the cultivation method I've taught you, why would you need to be afraid of him?" Ju Yu said coldly, "Tang Xian cultivated the cultivation method you taught her, but she was killed by that Daoist Zhang. That Daoist Zhang isn't even a Duju cultivator, so how can I trust you?" The face's skin twitched, but it couldn't find any rebuttal. Then, it fell silent, as if it was considering the matter. After a while, it looked up and said, "Fine, I can give you the cultivation method, but you must do it." Ju Yu nodded and said, "As long as the cultivation method arrives, I will do my best." The face said, "You can see the cultivation method later." Then, it changed the topic and said, "Heaven Lord Ju, are you after the mystic stone?" He chuckled when he saw Ju Yu frown. Half threatening and half reminding, he said, "Lord Ju Yu is not the only one in the Yuhuan All Heavens who has dealings with me." Ju Yu said calmly, "What are you trying to say, sir?" The face said playfully, "If I were Heaven Lord Ju, I would never covet the mystic stone. It's not something that can be used by anyone. Even if you get your hands on it, not only will it not benefit you, it will also bring you trouble." Ju Yu's expression didn't change. "Are you done, sir?" The face chuckled before reminding him again, "Don't forget what you promised us, Lord Giant Heaven." With that, the face turned back into the stone slab, and a cultivation method to avoid tribulations gradually appeared on it. It looked like it was written in the form of an erosion scroll. Ju Yu took half a step forward, swept his gaze across it, and memorized it. After a few breaths, the erosion runes disappeared without a trace. He didn't want to stay here any longer. He walked out from the inside, crossed the array door, and appeared on a high platform outside the hall. It was already night, but countless bright pearls decorated the entire palace like fireworks in the starry sky. After a moment of silence, he cast his gaze towards the deep and vast night sky. He was from the spirit clan, so apart from being taller than ordinary people, his senses were also better than those of the same generation. However, after attaining the Transcendence realm, he always felt an indescribable force affecting him, but when he tried to trace it, he couldn't find a trace. As his cultivation improved, he gradually realized that this was a level that he couldn't reach. Later, after confirming his speculation with various parties, he finally understood that the root of this was probably the Green Jade Palace Master. Since then, he didn't dare to delve deeper, afraid that he would alarm this almighty being. However, cultivators sought detachment. This feeling made him feel like he was trapped in a cage, and even his state of mind was affected in some aspects. He had originally thought that he could only endure like this, but he had unintentionally obtained this stone slab. Not only did it tell him some secrets, it also said that as long as he was willing to agree to its conditions, it could help him escape from this restriction. However, he couldn't be completely at ease with this person. In the beginning, he let his cultivation partner, Tang Xian, cultivate the method to control the evil spirit. Even if something bad happened, he could cast a spell to save her. However, as Tang Xian was imprisoned, he could only temporarily put it aside. Later, although Tang Xian was released, she was killed by Zhang Yan, causing all of this to be for naught. He went through the manual in his divine will again and thought to himself, with this technique, I can try to step into the four tribulations. Although it's a little risky, I can't care about that for the sake of obtaining that divine item. Almost no cultivator of the Transcendence realm pursued cultivation. If it wasn't for the fact that their magic power wouldn't grow for a long time, they would suppress their cultivation to prevent the tribulations from arriving too quickly. Firstly, it was not easy to pass the tribulations. Secondly, the more tribulations they experienced, the closer they would be to the end of their Tao. Therefore, before the time limit was reached, they would not take the initiative to break through. However, with the technique passed down by the evil spirit, things were very different. He could easily pass the tribulations. However, he knew that no matter how powerful his magic power was, as long as he used this technique, he would not be able to leave the evil spirit's control. This was the reason why the evil spirit was so willing to give it to him just now. Thinking of this, his eyes suddenly shone like a blazing flame. However, if he could obtain the profound stone and cut off this body, he would have a chance to start over. If he failed, he would just be crushed and die. As a cultivator of the Transcendence realm, he would have to face this day sooner or later. However, if he succeeded, not only could he get rid of the evil spirit, he might even be able to step into the door of the Great Tao in the future. It was worth a gamble. In the Guchang continent, another month passed. In one of the caves in the Guchang continent, a tainted black spiritual light suddenly floated up into the air. The originally clear sky suddenly darkened, as if it was covered by a thin veil, causing many living beings in the state capital to be frightened. On the shore of the river, a fisherman was fishing. At this moment, there was movement in the water. His spirit was lifted, and he raised his rod to catch it. Seeing that it was a fat fish, he was about to untie it, but when he reached out, the fish suddenly turned into a human head. The head glared at him and said unhappily, "You haven't had enough sleep yet, why are you disturbing me?" How rude. The fisherman's eyes widened, and he stared blankly for a while. Then, he screamed and fell backwards. At this moment, in the river, all the fish turned into human heads, chasing each other and laughing non-stop. The head of the Temple of Tranquility, one of the subordinate sects of the Green Jade Palace in the Guchang continent. Suddenly, he felt his heart palpitate. He got up from the praying mat, pushed open the door, and saw a woman with disheveled hair standing outside. But he did not sense the presence of a living person at all, and he asked warily, "Who are you?" The woman did not speak, and only took out a pair of scissors and a paper cutout person. Suddenly, the person moved, and shouted, "Spare me, spare me." The sound traveled far and wide. Logically speaking, it should have alerted many disciples. But strangely, there was no response. The abbey dean took a look and found that the once richly ornamented temple was now covered with cobwebs of dust, as if it had been through hundreds and thousands of years. He sneered and said, "So it's the evil spirits again." He knew that when the evil spirits came, all kinds of supernatural powers and spells would be useless. Thus, he immediately activated his skills and prepared to suppress them. But just as he thought about it, the woman cut the person's legs off, and he felt a pain in his knees. Suddenly, he realized that both his legs were gone. The woman cut a few more times, and his arms and body fell off one by one, until only his head was left hanging in midair. The woman chuckled, and came forward to pick him up. With a flash of her white shadow, she floated away. And at this moment, it was not just these few places. All kinds of strange things were happening all over the Guchang continent, and it was obvious that the evil spirits that had previously been silent had once again risen from the dead. At the same time, Zhang Yan's will of spirit also sensed these strange movements, and felt that several altars had suddenly disappeared. He opened his eyes and sensed for a moment, and then snorted coldly, without a hint of surprise in his expression. Because the skills and elixirs he had passed down were extremely effective in restraining evil spirits, these days, the four sides were all peaceful. If the person behind the evil spirits did not jump out now, then there would be no chance at all in 10 days. Footsteps could be heard from outside, and Jiang Chan hurried into the hall. Before he bowed, he hurriedly said, "Shang Zhen, just now, there is a letter from outside," saying that, Zhang Yan waved his hand and stopped him from speaking. He said, "I already know about this matter. Sage Jiang, we cannot afford to panic at this time. The evil spirits that have been stirred up today are far greater than before. This humble Taoist will go and eradicate them. You and the other 3 fellow Taoists stay here. No matter what happens outside, no matter what happens, no one is allowed to go out." Jiang Chan solemnly bowed, and said, "I understand." Zhang Yan stepped on the ground and leaped up, and with a bang, a clear air soared into the sky, and a magnificent light rushed to the place where the evil spirits were the thickest. Chapter 1594. In the cold imperial pond of Juyuan Heaven. This was a pool of floating air. Every time Yang Yugong sent his doppelganger down from the sky beyond heaven, he would stay here except for a few occasions. Ever since the conflict with the Green Jade Palace began, he had never left this place. As he sat there, he sensed something. He opened the door of the Qi pool and let a Taoist in. He asked, "What's the matter?" The Taoist bowed to him and said, "Sect Master, the disciples of Gu Chang State sent a message through the Two-Realm Dial. They said that the evil instrument that Ying Zheng is in control of has come out first. I don't know if this is Ying Zheng's own decision." Yang Yugong could not help but furrow his eyebrows. He had originally planned to attack from several domains at the same time so that the Green Jade Palace would not be able to resist. However, if Gu Changzhou attacked alone, the threat that he posed would be greatly reduced. The Green Jade Palace could easily deploy them and easily suppress him. Moreover, the net that he had painstakingly weaved would be torn open. He asked in a low voice, "What happened? Is Ying Zheng unable to control it?" The Taoist lowered his head and said, "Ying Zheng has not communicated with me for many days. It is difficult for me to know the situation here." Yang Yugong was displeased. "When did this happen? Why didn't you report this earlier?" The Taoist priest said awkwardly, "Before Ying Zheng entered the Green Jade Palace, he told me that Peng Xinhu is now the head of the hall and is watching me very closely. I'm afraid he won't be able to contact me like before for a long time. But he won't forget his promise. Plus, as a disciple, I don't want to disturb sect leader over such trivial matters." As he said this, he raised his head and tried to ask, "Do you want disciple to find out more?" Yang Yugong closed his eyes and thought for a while. He opened his eyes again and said, "There is no need. The Green Jade Palace must have found out about this person. Then what should we do next?" Yang Yugong said, "Forget it. It is not necessarily a bad thing that there are no evil spirits involved. Pass down the order to take down Wuju Tian as soon as possible. If we cannot succeed in Guchang State, then there is no need to wait any longer." After dismissing the Taoist, he placed his hand on the two-world dial in front of the table, preparing to inform the other 3 heaven masters of this matter. Although he had passed down the order, Juyuan Heaven alone would not be able to suppress Green Jade Palace. He still needed the permission of these few families before he could take action. In Gu Changzhou, after Zhang Yan came out of the hall, with a few void leaps, he came to the outside of the evil and filthy land. He looked up and saw that the day had turned into night. A full moon hung in the sky, but the smoke on the moon formed a ghostly smiling face, looking strange and terrifying. Evil spirits could devour the will of the gods, and they could also project the illusions of people's hearts into the real world. This was why these things that were inconceivable to cultivators were formed. Even a Taoist abode master could be poisoned if his mind wasn't steady. Only mortal metamorphosis cultivators wouldn't be affected by this. He retracted his gaze and tried to sense it again. He immediately discovered something and turned around to flee in a certain direction. As he went deeper, there were countless evil spirits invading the divine will. This kind of battle was using the strong to suppress the weak. There was no strategy at all. Normally, if a cultivator could endure it, he would pass. If he couldn't, he could only hold on to his will and think of a way to retreat before his divine will was exhausted. As long as no one from the same generation was around to spare him, he would have a chance to escape successfully. Zhang Yan's vitality was strong, and in this process, he continuously replenished the depletion of his divine will. Even though the evil spirits were invading at every moment, they couldn't overwhelm him. Not long after, he walked to the center of the filthy land and saw that there was a ball of black light in the sky, which was an eyesore. On the other hand, the area 50 kilometers below him had already become an expanse of ghosts and demons in the mortal world. Various ghosts and monsters that only existed in strange stories and strange tales had appeared, and most of them existed by relying on the filth in the hearts of people. As long as these evil spirits existed, they were real, and if they were left unchecked, then they would harm the world. As soon as Zhang Yan thought of it, thousands of thunderbolts exploded outside his body. In the rumbling sound, the thunderbolts flashed continuously, but none of the living creatures were hurt. This was the thunder method that he had deduced to deal with evil spirits. It had no power, but it could restrain filth. At the same time, he stretched out his hand and turned it into surging mystical qi. It turned into a big mystical qi hand and grabbed the black light in the sky. At this time, the evil spirits that invaded his divine will suddenly increased. There were more than a few times more than before, but he didn't move at all. The big hand firmly moved forward. The ball of black light seemed to be afraid. It turned in the air and suddenly moved. It turned into a strange child with 2 horns and a snake around his waist. It rode on a black cloud and was about to fly higher. Zhang Yan's eyes flashed. His previous guess was right. This was the magic treasure's true spirit. However, its aura was very strange and disgusting. He made up his mind and used a divine ability to hold it in place. In an instant, he froze it in the air. The big mystical qi hand followed and grabbed it in its palm. A shrill howl sounded. Suddenly, countless ghosts and demonic dragons appeared out of thin air and howled as they charged toward him. Zhang Yan's expression was indifferent. With a wave of his sleeve, huge waves surged and fierce tides surged. No matter what came, they were all sucked into it. These simple and direct attacks did not pose any threat to him. At the end of the day, he was only facing a magic tool. Even if he had a true spirit, he was still not a human. He only had a few tricks up his sleeves. Dealing with this thing was even easier than fighting a cultivator of the same generation. If it wasn't for the fact that he had some ability to hide, how could he have allowed this thing to exist until today? The big mystical qi hand gradually returned to its original form. He grabbed the strange child and saw that its 2 heads had different expressions. One was angry, and the other was afraid. It seemed to not understand human language, and its mouth was making bird-like chirping sounds. Zhang Yan narrowed his eyes. He realized that this instrument was probably not refined by a human cultivator. He tried to look at it with his divine will, but found that it was blank. It was either erased by someone or the true spirit just now had not been born for long. He thought about it for a moment. Ying Zheng had also heard that it was the same. It was because someone with profound cultivation was deliberately covering it up. Right at this moment, a change occurred on the strange child's body. Wisps of black smoke drifted out from his body, and every time a wisp of smoke disappeared, a portion of his body would disappear. Clearly, he had not expected that this would happen. His 2 heads revealed expressions of terror and panic, and his mouth opened wide as if he wanted to say something to Zhang Yan. However, no sound came out, and after a few breaths of time, he completely disappeared without a trace. Zhang Yan raised his eyebrows. Just now, he felt that the qi activity of the true spirit was rapidly weakening, and there was no way to stop it. This situation seemed to be fulfilling some kind of oath. He looked down and saw that there was only a broken jar left in his hand, but he could not tell what it was made of. After thinking about it, he put it in his sleeve and prepared to take it back to investigate. He glanced outside. At this time, the sky was already bright, and there was a warm light sprinkling down. The evil and filth in this area were all stirred up by the true spirit. After it disappeared, it became water without a source. After being cleansed by his thunder for a long time, most of it had already dissipated. Even if there was a little left, it would not be a problem. As for the living beings that were lucky enough to survive, they would be fine as long as they consumed pills or had a cultivator suppress the evil and poison. He sensed for a moment and confirmed that there was no more evil chi activity. Then, he waved his sleeve and returned to where he came from. After a few times in the air, he returned to the main hall. Jiang Chan and the others came up to him and asked, "Shang Zhen, how is the situation outside?" Zhang Yan replied, "The evil spirit has been suppressed by me. Fellow cultivators, you can open the barrier, but you still have to be careful. There is no need to stop the construction of the altar, in case it makes a comeback." When Jiang Chan and the others heard this, they were overjoyed. The evil spirit in the source of the disaster had been eliminated. Not only was there no longer a need for too many people to guard this place, but the Imperial Edict Golden Hall also did not need to be as heavily guarded as before. Now, more people could be transferred to the Wujue heaven. Zhang Yan said, "I have told Elder Peng that this matter will be resolved. Now that I have fulfilled my promise, I will bid you all farewell." Jiang Chan solemnly bowed and said, "This time, if Supreme Zhen is here, the evil spirit will not be able to be eliminated. I will truthfully report what happened here, without leaving anything out." Zhang Yan nodded at him and turned to leave the palace. The four people in the palace felt a tremor, and then a clear light flashed outside. In their senses, the majestic chi activity had already escaped. Jiang Chan turned his head and said to the person beside him, "Immediately inform Elder Peng of this matter." The person who was taken care of bowed and hurried out of the hall. On the Cloud Continent, Elder Peng received the news very quickly. He was both shocked and delighted. He knew that with Zhang Yan's ability, the evil spirit matter would be solved sooner or later, but he didn't expect it to be so quick. After asking about the process in detail and confirming that the evil spirit wouldn't appear in the short term, he ordered people to call Feng Lan, Guan Longzhao, and the others over. He said solemnly, "Just now, junior nephew Jiang sent news that the problem at Guchang Continent has been solved." Feng Lan was pumped up, saying, "If that is the case, then we still have a chance of winning at Wujue Heaven." Elder Peng thought about it for a moment and waved his hand, "There is no rush, we can slow down." Feng Lan was startled and said, "Elder, the matter at Guchang Continent might have something to do with Yang Yugong. If he knows that everything is fine, he will definitely increase his attacks. Those sects in the world won't be able to hold on for long." Elder Peng was really confident, saying, "The few formations at Wujue Heaven were set up by my Green Jade Palace. If this person could break it in a short time, then he wouldn't have waited until now. Before this, I didn't have enough manpower, which was why he was so arrogant. Now that I have free hands, what do I have to fear? Moreover, I have the 10,000 space ring in my hands, so it is just a matter of time for me to go to the heavens. Even if I really can't block it, I can help at any time. It won't be to the point where it can't be dealt with." Guan Longzhao said, "Elder, do you have other plans?" Elder Peng said coldly, "Wuchang Heaven Lord failed to ask for the cultivation technique and turned to Yang Yugong. If I don't punish him, won't everyone follow suit? Send my orders, send people to take down Wuchang Heaven first." Chapter 1595. The advantage that Green Jade Palace had over the other realms was that it controlled the 10,000 empty ring and could travel to other realms at will. However, the group of people from Juyuan Heaven was different. Ever since they became enemies with Green Jade Palace, they could not use the 10,000 empty ring anymore. It was equivalent to cutting off the path to other realms. They could not go anywhere as smoothly as Elder Peng and the rest. If Yang Yugong and the rest had not planned 1,000 years in advance, they would not have been able to gain any advantage. For example, now that Elder Peng wanted to attack Changtian, even if Yang Yugong and the rest knew about it, they could not deploy people in time to help. They could only sit and watch. Elder Peng saw this point. His purpose this time was to kill one to warn others so that the other realms would not dare to easily side with Juyu and Heaven. As for why he did not take the initiative to attack the four realms including Juyu and Heaven with such an advantage, it was because he suspected that these realms had already made arrangements to communicate with each other. No matter which realm he attacked, the other three realms would come to his rescue in time. Or they might just set up a net and wait for him to jump in at any time. He would not make this choice unless he had the absolute advantage. Guan Longzhao said, "It is not difficult to attack Changtian, but Daoren is after all a cultivator of Duju. Lord Ao Tian and the rest need to keep an eye on Yang Yugong and the rest. We have no one to fight against here. How should we solve this?" Peng Zhang Daoren said, "I have thought about this a long time ago." He looked at the two of them and said, "This time, I've decided to use the divine boat that the palace lord left behind. It can temporarily restrain old Daoist Lin inside. With the spiritual vigor accumulated in the boat, it can trap him for at least 100 years. When he comes out, I'll have already conquered the heavens." Both Guan and Feng were taken aback when they heard this. Feng Lan said, "But this item was originally intended by Elder to be used on Yang Yugong and the others. Now that he's taken it out, it'll cause them to be on guard in advance. When the final battle comes, there'll be one less lethal move." Peng Zhang Daoren, "That's a matter for the future. I can only take care of the present." A powerful artifact like the God-Shifter boat could only be used at a critical moment to stabilize the situation. It was indeed a pity to take it out now, but he had no other choice. If Chang Tian's actions caused the other realms to follow suit, the situation would definitely worsen. Guan Longzhao said, "Actually, there's no need to worry too much. With Zhang Shangzhen on my side, so what if I don't have this treasure?" When Feng Lan heard this, he also agreed and said, "That's right. I haven't seen fellow Zhang for a few years, but his magic power has become even more unfathomable. After obtaining the profound stone, he must have obtained some benefits from it." Elder Peng shook his head and said, "This is fellow Zhang's own opportunity. Everyone's path is different, and we have our own teachings. There's no need to be envious of others." Guan Longzhao and Feng Lan nodded in agreement. Elder Peng ordered the two of them to wait here while he went to the inner hall to retrieve the God-Shifter boat. When he came out, he handed the treasure over and said, "I'll leave this boat to the two of you for the time being. Remember to be careful. If something goes wrong, I'd rather protect the lives of the disciples first." After Guan Longzhao and Feng Lan received it, they cupped their hands together and said, "We definitely won't let Elder Fu down." Xian Heng Tian. When Zhang Yan walked out of the 10,000 empty ring, he saw a ray of clear light coming towards him. Knowing that it was the return of his clone, he let it enter his body. Instantly, many memories surged into his mind. Ao Shao's younger brother, Ao Shen, seemed to know how powerful Ao Shao's avatar was and did not dare to stop him. Not only that, he even quietly withdrew the people he had sent to besiege the Omniscient sect. Therefore, the entire Omniscient sect had successfully moved into the profound Hong Heaven. At this moment, they had already settled down in a certain area. After knowing about this, Zhang Yan nodded slightly. It was best that they did not have a conflict with Yi Haitian. As for the reason behind this, he had already sent a letter to Ao Shao. He believed that Ao Shao would give him an explanation. He waved his sleeves and walked towards the Golden Hall of Imperial Edict. First, he went to the glazed jade wall and returned the imperial edict that he had received previously. Instantly, there were many karma points on the Eam book for killing many evil spirits. Next, he exchanged most of them for the purple clear elixir. Since he had the dark stone, he no longer needed the purple clear elixir for his cultivation. However, he could bring it back to the mountain gate. If he had to collect these elixirs himself, it would take him at least a year to collect the same amount even though his cultivation had greatly increased. However, with the method of karma points, from the time he stepped into the main hall to the time he obtained the elixirs, it did not even take him a moment. These elixirs did not come out of thin air. There were people in Green Jade Palace who collected them. Most of them were demon cultivators, and some were even ferocious monsters that were tamed by force. There were also mighty people in other realms who followed suit. This way, not only could they satisfy their own cultivation needs, they could also exchange the leftovers for karma points. Therefore, logically speaking, the more realms that were covered by the karma point system, the easier it would be to obtain the elixirs. Just this point alone was worth his effort and support. He checked the glazed jade wall again. Seeing that there was nothing else worth paying attention to, he walked out of the hall and returned to the magic boat. He summoned a servant and asked about the recent situation. The servant said, "In the days that you have been away, apart from the arrival of the Mingju sect, there has been nothing else. There is only a talisman letter sent by Lord Ao Tian. It is waiting for you to take a look." As he spoke, he took out a jade talisman. Zhang Yan looked at it, and the item floated towards him. He sent his consciousness into it and found that it was Ao Shao who explained to him the reason why his brother had stopped the Mingju sect from leaving. After he finished reading it, he had a rough idea of what was going on. The reason why this happened this time was actually because of the Jin Di sect. This sect seemed to have deep connections with the demon sects that had submitted to the Yuhuan heavens. Most of Yi Haitian's people were from the Water Clan, so they could be considered as a demon cultivator. They used this connection to ask Yi Haitian to let the Mingju sect stay. Ao Shen had owed them a favor in the past, so he could not refuse. However, he still knew his limits. Although he said that the Jin Di sect was powerful, the people under him did not really fight. As for the elders and disciples of the Mingju sect, they were all killed by the Jin Di sect. Zhang Yan knew that the Yuhuan heavens was ultimately a world of human cultivators. Even though Ao Shao was a fourth tribulation cultivator, he was still treading on thin ice. He was probably constantly on guard against external enemies. The act of forming a good relationship with the demon sects and forming a group was also for the sake of survival. What he said was the truth. This was probably also the reason why he helped Elder Peng with all his might. However, he did not expect that the Jin Di sect was actually related to the demon sections. He immediately had some guesses about their origins. Previously, he had used karma points to investigate the location of this sect, but until now, he did not have an accurate answer. However, the disciples of the sect kept appearing, which meant that the mountain gate was very hidden. It must have been concealed by some kind of heavenly magic prohibition or a celestial artifact, so no one could detect it. Looking at the actions of the Jin Di sect, they had always been trying to prove that they were the orthodox disciples left behind by the great underworld grandmaster. Not only did they ask for the recognition of the other sects, but they also wanted to occupy the mountain gate. Their goal was probably not as simple as it seemed on the surface. There must be a deeper meaning behind it. Although he could not find the location of the sect, he believed that the sect would not stop here. They would definitely leave some traces. If he could successfully defeat Yang Yugong and the others, he could use the power of the Green Jade Palace to find them. After making up his mind, he did not think about this matter anymore. He returned to the cave room and concentrated for a moment. When the dark stone appeared in front of him again, he sat down and began to cultivate. In the depths of the Yi Haitian, there was a strange fish that looked like an eyeball and had countless long whiskers. Within the fish's body, there were thousands of caves of different sizes. Inside the fish, there were crisscrossing channels that were like meridians, connecting them to each other. At the place where the fish was, there was a handsome man with an unfamiliar face and 4 eyes. He supported himself with his elbows and supported his head with one hand. His expression revealed a sense of laziness, and his silver silk robe flowed down to the ground. There were white gauze curtains in the hall, and smoke from the sandalwood stove curled up. A few white cranes spread their wings and danced elegantly. Suddenly, they turned into a few young girls wearing thin gauze and ran to the jade-clear pool in front of them. Among the water droplets that splashed up, there were sounds of soft laughter coming from time to time. A strange big-bellied toad slowly crawled in from outside, but it did not dare to make a sound. It came to the man's side and said softly, "Master, that Yang Yugong sent a letter again." The man did not even raise his head and said lazily, "What did he say?" The strange toad said, "He said that Green Jade Palace is attacking Eternal Sky, and their subordinates are trapped in Wujua Sky, so they can't help in time. Therefore, he wants to ask for Master's help to slow down Green Jade Palace's attack." The man sneered and said, "He really knows how to order people around. Although I can send people to Eternal Sky, it's equivalent to blocking a disaster for him. Write a letter back and say that I can't help him this time." The strange toad bowed and said, "Yes, I'll go right now." "Wait," the man thought of something and sat up. He stopped the toad and said, "Green Jade Palace suddenly has the power to attack a world. Could it be that those evil spirits have been suppressed again?" The strange toad replied, "I heard that they asked that priest Zhang to come out and chase those evil spirits away." The man narrowed his eyes and said, "No wonder. I think that person must have gained a lot from that mystic stone." The strange toad said, "Master, you still haven't forgotten about that divine item?" The man said matter-of-factly, "Of course. When I roamed the worlds with the patriarch, I didn't know where it was. Not mentioning other things, just talking about the hard work back then, that item should belong to me. If it wasn't for the patriarch's restriction formation in Black Flood Heaven, I would have gone in and taken it long ago. However, the time is almost up, and the formation can't protect him for long." When he said this, he glanced sideways and asked, "Are there any more sects that have submitted?" The strange toad hurriedly said, "Master, there are more than 20 demonic sects that have submitted." The man pondered and said, "Including those sects that have submitted, more than 70% of the demonic sects in Yuhuan Heavens belong to me." Silver light flickered in all four of his eyes. "Very good. Let Yang Yugong fight with Green Jade Palace first. If he fails, I'll clean up the mess." Chapter 1596. The cultivators of the everlasting sky had never expected that the Green Jade Palace would ignore Wuju Heaven and attack them instead. They were caught off guard. The Heaven Lord of this world, Lin He, wanted to come out to face the enemy, but he was caught off guard and trapped by a giant ship. The ship was teleported out of the void sky and never returned. If the forces of Green Jade Palace were to be taken out on their own, none of the worlds would be able to contend against them. Without any almighty cultivators to stop them, it took them less than 3 days to defeat the remaining forces in this world and occupy all the places with abundant spiritual vigor. Elder Peng acted quickly. As soon as things settled down, he immediately invited Elder Dujue from the secret hall and made him the new Heaven Lord of this world. According to the unspoken rules of the universal heavens, if there was no Heaven Lord in the 19 great heavens, they would have to wait for 500 years. If there was still no Heaven Lord in the inner realm, only then would they consider inviting a cultivator from the outer realm to take over. Of course, it would be another game. However, now that the two great forces were fighting, Elder Peng was not someone who was stubborn about the rules. Why would he care about such things? In less than 10 days, the everlasting sky officially announced that it had changed masters. Even if the original Heaven Lord, Lin He, returned, he would not be able to turn the situation around. The moment this matter spread, all the realms became vigilant. Their originally restless thoughts were immediately restrained. At least, they did not dare to easily get close to Jueyuan Heaven before the winner was decided. When Yang Yugong heard this, he was shocked. He did not expect Elder Peng to do this. He immediately realized that if he did not act quickly, even Wuju Heaven might be overturned. He was quite decisive. He immediately urged the people of the four realms to step up their attacks and took out a few Dharma artifacts to blast open the last few difficult formations. He hurriedly drove out all the sects that were supported by the Green Jade Palace. However, the price he paid this time was not small. To ensure that he could successfully take down Wuju Heaven, he had to use a few hidden killing moves in advance. After this exchange, the two sides could be considered to have tied. However, Yang Yugong knew that he had lost this time. The Green Jade Palace had many magic treasures and a deep foundation. He did not know how many hidden killing moves they had. Even if they had planned for more than 1,000 years, they could not close the gap. If they could not win against the Green Jade Palace, it was the same as failure. Not to mention, the Green Jade Palace had a Heaven Lord out of nowhere. Although he would not actively interfere due to the palace's rules, he would not be polite if he went to fight. Actually, he could not be blamed for this. Although the Green Jade Palace had been compromising for thousands of years, giving him many opportunities, they were not ready to take action. Elder Peng's sudden promotion had disrupted his plans, so he had no choice but to take action in advance. If the outcome of the battle remained the same, he would no longer be able to fight against the Green Jade Palace once he exhausted all his trump cards. Hence, he had to find a way to break out of this predicament, and the only way he could do so was to borrow external help. Yang Spirit sat and said calmly, Peng Spirit, Wood, and Heaven. Yang, and Spirit, Lord, would be, Jade Palace. Yang Yugong sat there and said calmly, what did Lord Zhongling say? The disciple bowed and said, Lord Zhongling said that now is not the time for him to interfere. He also said that if I really could not take it, he would wait for an opportunity. Yang Yugong closed his eyes and said, I understand. You may leave. Lord Zhongling's rejection was within his expectations. However, sometimes, one could not simply stay still. The general trend was like a tide. Once one was involved, it would be difficult to get rid of it. He picked up a token from the table in front of him and tossed it into the pool of qi. In an instant, a ray of golden light fell, and after a long time, an old Taoist with a silver beard and a high forehead walked in. When he reached the inner room, he raised his hands and bowed, Senior Martial Brother, are you looking for me? Yang Yugong said, Junior Brother Luo, do something for me. The Daoran man said solemnly, Senior Brother, please speak. Yang Yugong said, go and leak some information about Jindi's sect to the outside world. The Daoran man thought for a while and said, Senior Brother, are you trying to provoke Taoist Zhang to deal with the group of demon cultivators? Thus, Lord Zhongling was forced to jump into this chess game. Forgive me for being blunt, but is it too deliberate? Taoist Zhang might not fall for it. Yang Yugong said plainly, I did not expect that to happen. I just wanted to spread the news. Jindi's sect claims to be the true disciple of Taiming Grandmaster. This name is too ostentatious. Taoist Zhang is the true disciple, why would he tolerate him? There will eventually be a battle between the two sides. If they fight in close quarters, then it will be as I wish. But if nothing happens in the near future, then at most, the current situation will remain unchanged, and I won't suffer any losses. The Daoran man nodded and said, I understand. Senior Brother, you are doing this to let Lord Zhongling know that I will not be used by him. However, this is not going to change my situation. Senior Brother, you have to find another way to deal with this. Fighting with Green Jade Palace is not good for me. Yang Yugong said, Junior Brother, you are right. I know what to do and I will make the appropriate arrangements. The old Taoist didn't pester him and said, it's good that Senior Martial Brother has a way. I'll take my leave now. I'll take care of what I've told you. He bowed and strode out. Yang Yugong thought for a long time. He took out a two-realm dial and pressed it. In an instant, a spiritual light appeared. Just now, a woman's figure appeared. He bowed and said, Greetings, Heavenly Lord Han. Han Su also bowed and said, Greetings, Heavenly Lord Yang. Yang Yugong did not beat around the bush and went straight to the point. Heavenly Lord Han, have you thought about what happened last time? Han Su retorted, Heavenly Lord Yang, aren't you afraid that I will reject you now? Although Wu Ju Tian has won, we've also seen what happened to Zhu Chang Tian. Which world would be willing to take the risk and join your formation at this time? Yang Yugong said, I think it is just because the price is not enough. Han Su looked over and said, then what can you offer, Heavenly Lord Yang? Yang Yugong said, is the mystic stones left by the great underworld ancestral master not enough? Han Su's voice turned cold. If Heavenly Lord Yang says so, then there is no need for us to continue this discussion. Yang Yugong said, Heavenly Lord Han, if it is only my clan that is fighting with Green Jade Palace, we most likely cannot win. But do you know why I still dare to fight? Han Su became serious when she heard that. She looked at him and said, Heavenly Lord Yang, are you saying that you have someone to rely on? Yang Yugong said, Today, there's a person standing on my side. I can't tell you his identity, but I can tell Heaven Lord Han that he has a powerful background. He has been hiding in the Yuhuan heavens for millions of years. No one knows how strong his magic power and divine arts are. If he makes a move, it won't be difficult to defeat Green Jade Palace. Han Su said indifferently, If you have someone of this level to help you, why did you come looking for me? Yang Yugong said, That is because this person cannot show himself too early, and we do not completely trust him. Han Su was surprised to see him being so blunt. She thought about it and asked, Is this person interested in the mystic stones? Yang Yugong said, Yes, but with the restriction of the contract, this person is willing to share with me. Heavenly Lord Han, you do not need to worry about this. Han Su thought for a while and said, I need to think about this, so I cannot give you an answer right now. Please forgive me. Yang Yugong said meaningfully, Heavenly Lord Han, think about it carefully. It seems like you do not offend either side, but if you are in danger, there will not be many people to help you. Even if there are benefits, it will be difficult for you to interfere. Then, he waved his hand and the spiritual light in front of him disappeared. At this moment, in the Yuhuan heavens, Green Jade Palace and the few world heavens led by Juyuan Heaven were consolidating and digesting the gains they had made after the battle. For the time being, they had all quieted down. Unknowingly, 3 years had passed. Ever since Zhang Yan returned from Guchang province, he had been in seclusion and did not care about the outside world. But on this day, he suddenly sensed something and woke up from his meditation. He thought for a while and summoned his servant. He asked a few questions and heard a noteworthy piece of news. Oh. Jin D sect is a sect that mainly focuses on demonic cultivators. The servant said, Yes, this news has spread. It is said that this sect has recruited demonic cultivator sects everywhere. It is said that they are extremely powerful now. Other than the limitless Heaven Lord, they are not inferior to any other world heavens. Zhang Yan thought for a while and was surprised. It was not difficult to see that this news was deliberately spread by someone. It was not to make Green Jade Palace feel apprehensive, but to draw him out to fight with this sect. For millions of years, although the demonic cultivator forces had been deliberately suppressed, there was a need for them to exist, so a part of them stayed. Their forces were indeed not small, but no one had ever been able to gather them together. If the Jindi sect really succeeded, they would indeed not be underestimated. Jindi sect borrowed the name of the great underworld patriarch, so he would definitely go to them, but not now. At the moment, he and Green Jade Palace were allies, and every move he made would affect the overall situation. Even if he wanted to deal with this sect, he would not do it alone. He would discuss it in detail with Elder Peng and the others before taking action. After asking a few more questions, he dismissed the servant and said, Chu Pan, you have been waiting outside for so long. Is there something wrong? Chu Pan stepped on the jade steps and came in from outside. He replied, Master, He Shangzhen has finished his seclusion a few days ago and is waiting for you to summon him. I have specially come back to report to you. Zhang Yan was slightly surprised. In less than 10 years, He Xianyin had actually achieved enlightenment, which was slightly earlier than he had imagined. However, he had seen the records in the Luo Mountain Monastery. It seemed that after he entered the mortal world, he was faster than others in any cultivation method because he had some secret method. This was good news. This meant that he had another enlightenment cultivator on his side. Moreover, Yang Yugong and the others did not know about it. If he was used well, he would definitely have the effect of a surprise attack. He thought quickly and said, Go and invite Jinren He here.